Chapter 285. Wang Daoyuan gave his doppelganger Wu Yi a low-grade second-rank metal-attributed flying sword. This magic tool was made when he was practicing the art of refining. There was also a storage bag which contained a few thousand spirit stones, more than a dozen second-rank pills and several second-rank talismans. In Wu Yi's memory, the flying sword and storage bag were obtained by killing a rogue cultivator after he left the ancient cultivator's cave. He gave Wu Yi a few Earth Escape talismans. After erasing all memories of himself, he let Wu Yi use Earth Escape talismans to head to the south of the mountain. The two of them were in the east of Guiyan Valley. There were almost no second-rank demonic beasts, so Earth Escape was not dangerous. After Wu Yi's doppelganger left, Wang Daoyuan also immediately used Earth Escape talisman to head to Guiyan Market Square. This time it took him 4 to 5 days to deal with his doppelganger. It was common for rogue cultivators to close their shops and go out to do business. He was not afraid that people would be suspicious. With Wang Daoyuan's current divine sense cultivation, he could perceive his doppelganger within 100 miles. This meant that he could directly perceive what his doppelganger saw and heard. In addition, he could also directly say whatever he wanted to say from Wu Yi's mouth. Guiyan Market Square was only about 30 miles from the south to the north. The widest from east to west was only about 20 miles. Within 100 miles of perception, as long as Wu Yi did not leave Guiyan Market Square, he could perceive him. 3 days later, Wu Yi's doppelganger entered his perception range. Wu Yi followed his memory and entered Guiyan Market Square. The Blood Shadow North Mountain Branch's encampment was in the central area of Guiyan Market Square. Wu Yi's doppelganger was dressed like a rogue cultivator. He wore a black robe and a bamboo hat. He walked to the entrance of a restaurant in the central area. This restaurant's entrance faced the south. A red plaque with golden edges was hung on the lintel. 3 golden words were written on it: Immortal Welcome Restaurant. This Immortal Welcome Restaurant was the encampment of the Blood Shadow North Mountain Branch. Wu Yi entered the Immortal Welcome Restaurant. Immediately, a greeter came forward and asked, "Senior, are you here for a meal or a room?" Wu Yi said coldly, "A single courtyard." The layout of the Immortal Welcome Restaurant was similar to Guiyan Inn. The rooms were divided into 3 types: a common room, a private room, and a courtyard. The greeter brought Wu Yi to the counter. The shopkeeper handed him a token and said, "The easternmost courtyard in the backyard." The usher smiled and said, "Senior, please follow me." Wu Yi did not take the token, nor did he move. He sneered and said, "Give me the westernmost courtyard. The western part is of the metal element, and the murderous aura is the strongest." The shopkeeper didn't even raise his eyes. He looked at the account book and said, "Not everyone can live in the westernmost courtyard. If you want to live there, it depends on how capable Dao Yu is." Wu Yi smiled and said, "I have always been very confident in my own abilities." The shopkeeper shouted, "Men!" A 4th-level foundation establishment black-clothed young man walked over. The shopkeeper continued, "Take him to the westernmost courtyard. Don't care if he's dead or alive." The black-clothed youth didn't answer. He turned around and walked towards the backyard. Wu Yi followed behind him. Soon, the two of them arrived at the entrance of a small courtyard that occupied half an acre of land. There was nothing special about this small courtyard, except that it was covered by a layer of light. The black-clothed youth said, "The formation of this small courtyard doesn't have a control token. If you have the ability to enter, you can stay here." Wu Yi walked straight forward and passed through the light barrier. Then his path became complicated. After a few steps, he had to turn a corner. Sometimes he had to take a few steps back. The distance from the defensive light barrier to the entrance of the small courtyard was only a few feet, but he had to walk hundreds of steps. He walked to the entrance and gently pushed the door open. Then he walked into the small courtyard. Seeing him enter, the black-clothed youth turned around and left the backyard. After Wu Yi entered the small courtyard, he walked straight to the main building. There were no formations or restrictions along the way. When he arrived at the main building, he pushed the door open and entered. The main building was divided into 3 rooms. The central room was in the middle. There was a portrait hanging on the back wall of the central room. The person in the portrait was wearing a blood-red robe. He held a black sword in his right hand and a head in his left hand. He was walking forward. The head looked very strange. Its facial features looked a little like a human's, but it had scales and 4 ox-like horns. However, the portrait depicted the person's back. The face couldn't be seen at all. It was impossible to tell whether the person in the portrait was a man or a woman. When Wu Yi became an internal member of the Blood Shadow North Mountain Branch, he was told that this was the portrait of ancestor Shui. Legend had it that ancestor Shui Yi displayed his might when resisting the invasion of the foreign species. He killed the foreign species commander and became famous. After repelling the invaders, he established a sect and recruited disciples. Later on, for some unknown reason, ancestor Shui Yi disappeared. His disciples fought fiercely for power and profit. After several years of fighting, only 2 disciples were left. Their cultivations weren't very good. Most of the sect's experts were dead. They didn't dare to stay in the mountain gate. The 2 of them took the sect's inheritance and treasures and left the mountain gate. Later, the 2 disciples of ancestor Shui Yi founded Blood Shadow together. Ancestor Shui Yi was honored as the founder of Blood Shadow sect. Wu Yi walked to the offering table and took out 3 incense sticks. He lit them and inserted them into the incense burner in front of the portrait. Then he walked to the futon beside the offering table and knelt down. He kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times to the portrait. Then a tile under the offering table moved to the side, revealing a half-foot wide pit. At the bottom of the pit was a dent. The pattern on it was exactly the same as the front of Wu Yi's Blood Shadow token. He took out the Blood Shadow token and placed it on the dent. Then he cut his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood onto the token. The token of an internal member of Blood Shadow was different from that of an external member. Anyone who picked it up could become a member of Blood Shadow. An internal member's token was 1 token per person. Once the person died, the token would become invalid. He dripped his blood on the token to prove that it was his. When his blood fell on the token, it emitted a light. After 3 breaths, the light of the token disappeared. A cracking sound came from the eastern house. Wu Yi immediately put away the token and moved the tile back to cover the small pit. He walked towards the eastern house and saw a 5-foot square hole in the ground of the eastern house. There was a staircase in the hole that extended downwards. He followed the staircase down to the bottom of the hole. After half a cup of tea's time, he reached the bottom of the hole. As soon as he walked down the stairs, 3 swords came out from different directions and were placed on his neck. It just so happened that his neck was completely surrounded. There was no place to hide. For people walked out from the darkness. 3 of them were holding swords. All of them were at Foundation Establishment Level 3. The empty-handed one was at Foundation Establishment Level 6. The empty-handed cultivator asked, "What's your name?" Wu Yi took out the token and showed it to him. The empty-handed cultivator was surprised. "Wu Yi, you haven't come back for more than 20 years. But your soul lamp hasn't been extinguished. The Hall Master thought you had betrayed us. If you didn't come back after 25 years, the Hall Master would have reported to the headquarters and sent Blood Wolf to kill you. Where have you been all these years? Why haven't you come back?" Wu Yi coldly snorted. He released the spirit energy of Foundation Establishment Level 8 and said, "Is this something you should ask?" The 3 sword-wielding cultivators were shocked. They immediately withdrew their swords. The empty-handed cultivator was also a bit scared. In Blood Shadow Strength Determined Status, Wu Yi was at Foundation Establishment Level 8. His status was naturally above the 4 of them. They didn't dare to offend him. Wu Yi said to the empty-handed cultivator, "Take me to see the Hall Master." The empty-handed cultivator didn't say anything and led the way in front. This underground cave was very big. The empty-handed cultivator led him for 15 minutes before they arrived at a palace-like building. The empty-handed cultivator shouted, "Reporting to the Hall Master, Sir Wu Yi has returned." A female voice came from inside the palace. "Wu Yi, come in." Wu Yi clasped his fist. "Yes, Hall Master." Saying so, he walked forward. The empty-handed cultivator left and continued to guard the door. Chapter 286. When Wu Yi entered the palace, he saw a red-clothed woman sitting on the main seat, and a black-clothed man sitting below her. The red-clothed woman wore a scarlet fox mask, and her figure was extremely voluptuous. Her clothes were also made of extraordinary cloth. The cloth used for a normal robe was enough to make more than 10 sets of clothes for her. Wu Yi was instinctively afraid of this red-clothed woman, and didn't dare to have any other thoughts. Wang Daoyuan, who was using his panoramic perception, felt his blood boil. He was worried that his emotions would disturb Wu Yi, so he immediately circulated his water spirit energy to calm himself down. On the other side, Wu Yi wasn't affected at all. He bowed. "Wu Yi greets Hall Master." After speaking, he cupped his hands towards the black-clothed man. "Greetings, Lord Yu Lang." This red-clothed woman was called Scarlet Fox, and she was the person in charge of the Blood Shadow Mountain's northern branch. She was said to be an early Zifu realm cultivator, but Wu Yi couldn't feel her spirit energy at all. The black-clothed man was the #1 assassin of the northern branch, Yu Lang. He was still at the peak of Foundation Establishment, and it seemed like he didn't have enough spirit stones to exchange for a yin-yang purple jade. Wang Daoyuan was quite happy. As long as he didn't open his Zifu, he could take him down and refine him into his clone. Wu Yi and Yu Lang's clones exchanged for a yin-yang purple jade each. Scarlet Fox asked, Wu Yi, you accepted the mission to assassinate Wang Daoyuan of the Jade Spring Wang family. In the past 20 years Wang Daoyuan has been living well, but there's been no news of you. How do you explain this? Wu Yi immediately recounted his experiences in the past 20 years according to Wang Daoyuan's altered memories. Scarlet Fox muttered, what you said is too bizarre. You were able to enter the outer regions of the sky/mountain range, and you were able to escape from an ancient cultivator's cave. Your words don't have any evidence or witnesses, so how can I believe you? Yulang, what do you think? Yulang replied, Hall Master, in my opinion Wu Yi's words can't be trusted, but we can't be sure that he's lying either. Wu Yi is already at the 8th level of Foundation Establishment, and is one of the top experts in our northern branch. We can't deal with him easily, so let's use the Truth Talisman. Scarlet Fox nodded and said to Wu Yi, in Yu Lang's opinion, we will use the Truth Questioning Talisman on you. Wu Yi, are you willing? Wu Yi cupped his hands and said, this subordinate is willing. Crimson Fox took out a jade box and opened it. Within it was a blood-red spirit talisman. Judging from the fluctuation of spiritual power emitted from the talisman, it was a 3rd-level low-grade questioning talisman. 4 cultivators in the late stage of Foundation Establishment and the peak stage, their soul strength and spiritual sense cultivation were high enough. The probability of using the 2nd-level upper-grade questioning heart talisman was very high. To be on the safe side, he needed to use a 3rd-grade low-grade truth questioning talisman. The highest grade the truth questioning talisman could reach was 3rd-level lower grade. Any higher grade would be meaningless. A Zifu disciple's soul had transformed into a divine soul, and he had the protection of his Zifu disciple's Zifu disciple. The interrogation talisman was completely useless. The 3rd-order questioning heart talisman was prepared for cultivators in the late stage and peak stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Scarlet Fox handed the questioning heart talisman to Quiet Wolf. Yu Lang took the truth questioning talisman and walked in front of Wu Yi. He placed the truth questioning talisman on Wu Yi's forehead and activated it with his spiritual energy. In order to prevent other Zifu disciples from using their spiritual sense to activate the 3rd-order talisman, a special arrangement was made on the talisman. Only by injecting spiritual sense into the trigger point could the talisman be successfully activated. A Foundation Establishment cultivator would still need to spend quite a bit of time to find the trigger point on the 3rd-order talisman. This wasn't like facing an enemy in battle. Using spiritual energy to activate the talisman was much simpler. After the truth questioning talisman was activated, Scarlet Fox asked Wu Yi more than 10 questions. Wu Yi's memories had been tampered with by Wang Daoyuan. Unless a Zifu disciple or higher directly searched his soul, they wouldn't be able to find any clues. Just by relying on the truth questioning talisman, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Wu Yi answered all of Scarlet Fox's questions according to his tampered memories. Scarlet Fox waved her hand and the truth questioning talisman on Wu Yi's forehead fell to the ground, turning into a wisp of green smoke. She laughed lightly and said, what you said is indeed the truth. My northern mountain branch has gained another capable cultivator in the late stage of Foundation Establishment. Wu Yi bowed and apologized. Wu Yi is incompetent. My cultivation is above Wang Daoyuan's, but I wasn't able to obtain victory. Hall Master, please punish me. Scarlet Fox laughed. This isn't your fault. Even I, with my cultivation at the 5th level of Foundation Establishment, wouldn't have the confidence to win against the 3rd level Wang Daoyuan. Wu Yi didn't have any memories of Wang Daoyuan. Hearing these words he felt extremely astonished. Scarlet Fox was someone from the Blood Wolf sect. The Blood Wolf sect was responsible for dealing with traitors and leakers. Every one of them was far stronger than those of the same level. Yet, Scarlet Fox said that he couldn't obtain victory with his 2-level cultivation advantage. Yu Lang also said, you just came from the sky-chopping mountain range. You don't know much about Wang Daoyuan's past 20 years. More than 10 years ago, the Netherworld sect and the Savage Sun sect had a gambling match. Both sects sent out cultivators from the early stage of Foundation Establishment to the late stage of Zifu Disciple to duel. The winner of the duel would determine the distribution of the Spirit Stone Mine. With his cultivation at the 5th level of Foundation Establishment, he defeated 5 mid-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators from the Savage Sun sect. 3 of them were even at the 6th level of Foundation Establishment. Among the three, one was a direct descendant of the Wei clan, one was a half-demon with the bloodline of the Black Flame Tiger, and the last one was a wind attribute cultivator. Among cultivators of the same level, they were all first-rate experts. The Wei clan ancestor and the Wang clan ancestor were close friends. Wang Daoyuan knew the weakness of the Wei clan. Defeating the Wei clan's direct descendant could be said to be a trick. However, defeating the half-demon and wind attribute cultivator relied on brute strength. He could condense the image of a golden rock. This image could be used in close combat and could be used for feather attacks. As long as he could condense the image of the golden rock, a 6th-level foundation establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to resist. After he obtained 5 consecutive victories, the Savage Sun sect sent out their top genius, Lei Wudao. He was a lightning attribute sword cultivator and had long been known to be invincible among cultivators of the same level. His cultivation was 1 level higher, but he was still heavily injured by Wang Daoyuan. On the other hand, Wang Daoyuan only suffered light injuries and lost after exhausting his spiritual energy. If the two of them fought at the same level, the outcome would be uncertain. Back then, when you assassinated him, did you see this golden rock image? Wu Yi's mouth opened wide in shock. I didn't expect the golden rock image to be so powerful. When I assassinated him back then, he did use the golden rock image. However, I had the spirit-binding silk cloak and hid behind the mountain rocks. He only used the golden rock image to search for me and didn't attack much. If not for the spirit-binding silk cloak, I'm afraid I would have died back then. Unfortunately, when I was escaping, the cloak was also damaged. Scarlet Fox laughed. It's good enough that you came back alive. That kid isn't someone you can deal with. Most of the people in the Blood Wolf clan are only at the standard of the Wei clan's direct descendant. Even the top figures can hardly compare to Lei Wudao. Wang Daoyuan's cultivation talent isn't much, but his fighting strength is comparable to Lei Wudao. Wu Yi nodded dispiritedly and didn't say anything else. Scarlet Fox continued, You're now an 8th-level foundation establishment cultivator. In our North Mountain branch, you can be considered one of the top experts. I'll keep your cave residence for you. Go back and take a good look at the recent information. Only then will you be able to take on important tasks in the future. Wu Yi cupped his hands and left the palace, walking back to his cave residence. After Wu Yi left, Scarlet Fox asked Yulang, Do you think Wu Yi is reliable? Yulang sneered. Do you think I'm reliable? We're not direct descendants of the Blood Shadow like you. We only joined the Blood Shadow for the opportunity to advance. Wu Yi was raised by you since he was in the Qi refinement stage while I joined halfway. You're asking me if he's reliable. Are you doubting him or me? As long as the Blood Shadow can provide the Yin-Yang Purple Jade and the Purple Cloudwood Core, we're reliable. If we don't have these two things, we're unreliable. After speaking, Yulang walked out of the palace. Chapter 287. Scarlet Fox sighed and shook her head helplessly. She was a direct descendant of Blood Shadow, and her father was a mid-level member of Blood Shadow. When she was young, she was quickly sent to Blood Wolf after displaying her extraordinary cultivation talent. Although her talent was not the best in Blood Wolf, it was still top-notch. Her journey was smooth and she reached the peak of foundation establishment in her 70s. As long as the top geniuses of Blood Wolf had enough contributions, they could directly exchange for Yin-Yang Purple Jade or Purple Cloudwood Core. For someone of her level, she had to fight for the right to exchange with Blood Wolf members of the same level. In the competition, she shone brightly and defeated all her opponents, obtaining the right to exchange and successfully establishing her Purple Mansion. After Blood Wolf members established their Purple Mansion, they would be specially used to hunt down Purple Mansion targets and would be heavily nurtured. Those who performed well might enter the upper echelons. However, she was ostracized because she defeated the grandson of a Golden Core upper echelon in the competition for the right to exchange and did not receive any important tasks. That Golden Core upper echelon firmly believed that his grandson would win and even made a bet for that. In the end, that Golden Core lost the bet and lost a lot of money. He even embarrassed himself among the upper echelons. Back then she was the #1 beauty in Blood Wolf. That Golden Core cultivator wanted to marry her, and that Golden Core cultivator was very supportive. Scarlet Fox embarrassed him, but as long as his grandson could marry her, he would be able to regain his lost face. He expressed that as long as she was willing to marry his grandson, he would entrust her with important tasks. However, Scarlet Fox was proud and arrogant back then. How could she be willing to marry a loser? That Golden Core cultivator was embarrassed once again. After that, Scarlet Fox was suppressed even more. Her father was sent out to carry out a dangerous mission and died. She was also disheartened and completely gave up on the idea of entering the upper echelons. She volunteered to be the branch hall master. This job was done by the worst batch of people in Blood Wolf, or the useless descendants of the upper echelons. That golden core upper echelon lost face twice in a row, and his losses were not small either. How could he let her have it easy? Therefore he sent her to the Shanbei branch. She came to the Shanbei branch more than 100 years ago. At that time, the demons and Netherworld sect had yet to reach a reconciliation, and the humans of Shanbei were still suppressed. Blood Shadow was also a human force, and naturally they did not have it easy and were often attacked by the demons. Until nearly 100 years ago, when the Underworld sect and the Demon Clan had reconciled and humans had entered the northern mountains, the Demon Clan had stopped suppressing the humans. The days in the Shanbei branch were also much better. Scarlet Fox also began to take in rogue cultivators to strengthen his strength. However, that Golden Core Senior wouldn't let her off so easily. As soon as the Shanbei branch began to show signs of improvement, the headquarters had sent people over to seize the credit. They had placed a large number of people over, and they had even sent over an early-stage Zifu disciple vice hall master. Although there were more people in the Shanbei branch and their influence had increased greatly, the power that Scarlet Fox controlled had weakened instead. Moreover, her direct subordinates had been suppressed by the vice hall master. Cultivators like Wu Yi, whom she had personally nurtured, were rarely able to grow up. Later on, he directly recruited rogue cultivators into the branch to suppress the people sent by the Blood Shadow headquarters. Yu Lang was the representative of this group of people. Scarlet Fox's days here weren't too good either. His direct subordinates were too weak, the people sent by the headquarters didn't listen to him, and the loose cultivators were wild and untamed. In order to suppress the vice hall master, Yu Lang had directly talked back to her, but she had to endure it. As for Wu Yi, who was under her direct command, she wouldn't easily deal with him. All the Foundation establishment cultivators in the Shanbei branch had their own cave abodes underground, and Wu Yi was naturally no exception. He came to his cave abode and pretended to cultivate. Not long after, someone sent over a beast skin book with the words "Bounty Record" written on the cover. The Blood Shadow's rule was that assassinations of Zifu disciple and above were all done by the headquarters. The various branches would only take on Qi refinement and Foundation establishment cultivators. The only cultivators recorded in the bounty book were Qi refinement and Foundation establishment cultivators. The first page of the beast skin book was a table of contents, and the second page was the Scarlet Beard Bandits bounty. The Scarlet Beard Bandits currently had 7 Foundation establishment cultivators and 2 of their leaders. Each of them had a bounty of 300,000 spirit stones, while the other 5 had bounties ranging from 50 to 100,000 spirit stones. There were also many Foundation establishment cultivators from the various powers in the Shanbei branch, including cultivators from the Beiyuan sword sect. However, their bounties were all below 100,000 spirit stones. At the end of the Foundation establishment cultivators' bounties, there was also Wang Daoyuan's bounty. The bounty record also recorded the target's basic information, including his age, cultivation, as well as his more famous battle achievements. The bounty record recorded his participation in the Battle of Guiyan Valley, the encirclement of the Scarlet Beard Bandits, the defeat of the Beast Tide, and his participation in the duel. However, the bounty record didn't mention his activities in the Sky-Split Mountain range in detail. It only said that he had been in seclusion on Jadesong Mountain for the past 10 years. Through Wu Yi's doppelganger, Wang Daoyuan saw the records about himself and felt relieved. Even with the Blood Shadow's intelligence network, they didn't discover that he had disguised himself a few times, nor did they know that he was in the 7th stage of Foundation establishment. As for his cultivation, it said that he was in the 5th stage of Foundation establishment 10 years ago. Furthermore, he might not have used his full strength during the duel, so it was not recommended for assassins below the peak of Foundation establishment to attack him. According to the bounty record, his head was currently worth 200,000 spirit stones. In the bounty record, it was only lower than the 2 leaders of the Scarlet Beard Bandits. Behind his bounty record was the 12th uncle Wang Shui. His head was currently worth 100,000 spirit stones. This made Wang Daoyuan very happy. In the future he could go and mock the 12th uncle. Wang Daoyuan transmitted the information he saw to his clone in the bounty record space, allowing them to record it in a jade scroll. Although this information was rather brief, it was still somewhat useful, especially the information regarding the Beiyuan sword sect and the Scarlet Beard Bandits. The Wang clan and these 2 forces would fight sooner or later. Having some understanding was much better than not knowing anything. 3 days later, A black-clothed man at the third stage of Foundation establishment came to Wu Yi's cave abode. The black-clothed man cupped his hands towards Wu Yi and said, "Lord Wu Yi, the hall master is looking for you. Please follow me." Wu Yi didn't say anything and followed behind the black-clothed man. The black-clothed man didn't bring him to the palace, but to the Scarlet Fox's door. The black-clothed man cupped his hands towards the door of the cave abode and said, "Hall master, Lord Wu Yi is here." A voice sounded from within the cave abode, "You may leave." After the black-clothed man left, the cave abode's door opened and a fragrant wind blew over. The Scarlet Fox's voice sounded once more, "Come in." Wu Yi was extremely fearful of the Scarlet Fox and didn't dare to have any improper thoughts, walking in obediently. The Scarlet Fox's cave abode was very big. There was even a spring inside and many exotic flowers and herbs were planted. There was also an arched door on the back wall of the cave abode. Behind it should be the Scarlet Fox's boudoir. In the middle of the cave abode was a circular stone table about 3 feet in diameter. There were 4 stone chairs placed around the stone table. The Scarlet Fox was sitting on a stone chair with her legs crossed. Wu Yi was just about to bow and greet when the Scarlet Fox said, "There's no need for these empty formalities. When you return this time, I originally wanted you to be a steward. However, the deputy hall master didn't agree. He said that you haven't returned for more than 20 years. Even if you used the conscience-questioning talisman and nothing happened, there's still no guarantee that you didn't collude with other forces. To be on the safe side, I'll still conduct some tests for you. If you can pass the tests, I'll agree to let you be a steward. If you don't pass the tests, not only will you not be able to be a steward, you might even be punished. You're my man, so I won't let you be dealt with by the deputy hall master. This is something I prepared for you. Don't embarrass me." Finished talking, he threw a storage pouch to Wu Yi. Chapter 288. Wu Yi received the storage bag, hung it at his waist and said with clasped hands, "Many thanks for Hall Head's help." Crimson Fox smiled and said, "You were groomed by me single-handedly, my direct subordinate. If I don't help my own direct subordinates, can I help others? Vice Hall Head suspects that you're colluding with the Netherworld sect. This test might be to make you kill the Netherworld sect's people. You go ahead and do it. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility for you." Wu Yi said solemnly, "Many thanks for Hall Head's great kindness. This subordinate will definitely do his best." Crimson Fox nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "You go then. When doing things, you have to remember that you're not Bloodshadow's people but my Crimson Fox's people." Wu Yi withdrew respectfully and returned to his abode. After returning to the abode, he opened the storage bag that Crimson Fox gave. One had to admit that Crimson Fox treated his direct subordinates really well. The storage bag really contained quite a number of good things. A high-grade Tier 2 long sword, a high-grade Tier 2 shield, and also a long robe mixed with a small amount of God-forbidding silkworm silk. Apart from this, there were also several medicinal pills. The long sword was pitch black throughout. The main material was also black gold. But the material quality was much higher than that middle-grade Tier 2 black gold sword. The refining method could not be mentioned in the same breath as well. The shield seemed to be refined from some kind of tortoise shell. The refining method was somewhat crude. The tortoise shell's damage was more severe. One could not tell what kind it was. However, this magic artifact's defensive power was really not weak. After a day, a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator came to Wu Yi's abode. Wu Yi clasped his hands and said, "Greetings, Lord MOU." This MOU was the Vice Hall Head's person. He himself was also transferred over from Bloodshadow's headquarters. However, his talent was not too good and had not entered Bloodwolf before. He was already 130 to 140 years old and had only just reached Peak Foundation establishment not long ago. And it was said that in Bloodwolf, one could be eliminated if they did not reach Peak Foundation establishment before 100 years old. MOU did not reply. After handing a jade slip to Wu Yi, he turned around and left. Wu Yi plunged his divine sense into the jade slip. Inside the jade slip was the test content that the Vice Hall Head gave. Just as Crimson Fox expected previously, the Vice Hall Head's test was indeed to make him kill the Netherworld sect's people. However, this test was not the assassination that Blood Shadow was good at, but an ambush. According to Blood Shadow's intelligence, a Netherworld sect caravan would depart from Gold Goose City in 10 days. They would carry a batch of goods through Guiyan Valley and arrive at Guiyan Market. Wu Yi's mission was to intercept the caravan with a few Blood Shadow Mid-Foundation establishment cultivators. Half of the seized goods would go to the North Mountain branch, and the other half would go to the cultivators on the mission. As the main force, Wu Yi could take half of the resources obtained by the cultivators who went on missions, which was a quarter of the total amount. There would be 4 Foundation Establishment cultivators in the Underworld sect's caravan. One of them would be at the 7th level of Foundation Establishment, one at the 5th level of Foundation Establishment, and 2 at the 3rd level of Foundation Establishment. Wu Yi had stayed in the space of the Spiritual Pearl for so many years, so he wasn't completely freeloading. Wang Daoyuan had long had the idea of letting his clone Wu Yi infiltrate Blood Shadow's inner workings, which was why he had let him cultivate the sword cultivation legacy he had obtained from Li Qingxuan. Wu Yi already knew the heaven-cleaving sword and the myriad sword art, so even if he learned more, it wouldn't be too conspicuous. Although he didn't have much actual combat experience with the sword cultivation legacy, his combat strength wasn't considered weak among those of the same level. It wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with an ordinary 7th level Foundation Establishment cultivator. Furthermore, a cultivator sent by the Underworld sect to transport goods couldn't be considered very strong. It wouldn't be a problem for Wu Yi to take him down. On Blood Shadow's side, they allowed Wu Yi to bring 3 mid-Foundation Establishment cultivators. In terms of cultivation, they could crush the other party. However, most of Blood Shadow's cultivators were only good at sneak attacks and not head-on confrontations. If the sneak attack failed, the 3 mid-Foundation Establishment cultivators on Blood Shadow's side might not be able to defeat the 3 mid- and early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators of the Underworld sect. The location of the ambush this time was still in the Carriage Gorge area of the Guiyan Valley. The Underworld sect had suffered many losses there and was quite vigilant. It would be a little difficult to kill them in one shot. To be safe, Wang Daoyuan planned to sneak over first and personally control his clone, Wu Yi, when the time came. With his combat experience, Wu Yi's cultivation, and the sword cultivation legacy, even if the Underworld sect's 7th level Foundation Establishment cultivator was a wily old fox, he wouldn't be able to escape. As for the other 3 Foundation Establishment cultivators, he couldn't be bothered to care about them. It would be better if they died. He could take half of the goods for himself. Blood Shadow's side set off 5 days later. After Wang Daoyuan received the news, he immediately rushed to the Carriage Gorge. He discovered an underground rock crevice more than 15 kilometers east of the Carriage Gorge and more than 50 meters underground. Although the rock crevice wasn't big, it was enough for a person to hide in. He hid in the rock crevice and waited for the day of the ambush. 5 days later, it was time for Wu Yi to set off. Mou brought him to the hall where the hall master was. At this moment, there were 6 people in the hall. The hall master was still sitting on the main seat and Yu Lang was sitting on the right. On the left, there was a person wearing a tight black robe. His face was covered with a mask and his head was wrapped tightly in a black cloth. Judging from her curvaceous figure, she was undoubtedly a woman. This person was the Shanbei Division's Deputy Hall Master, Xian Martin. His cultivation was at the early stage Zifu realm. It was said that he was once a member of the Blood Wolf. The Golden Core cultivator who suppressed Scarlet Fox was quite smart. If he had sent a man, he would have been fooled by Scarlet Fox. To deal with a beauty like Scarlet Fox, he had to send a woman. The other 3 people in the hall were all at the mid-stage Foundation Establishment stage and were wearing black robes. After Wu Yi entered the hall, Scarlet Fox said softly, "Wu Yi, in order to help you complete the mission, the Vice Hall Master sent 3 trusted aides to assist you. You have to perform well and not let down the Vice Hall Master's kind intentions." Only now did Wu Yi understand what Crimson Fox meant when he gave him the magic artifact. Scarlet Fox wanted him to remember that he was Scarlet Fox's man and not Blood Shadow's man. This meant that he had to try his best to kill the 3 of them. The authority to lead this mission was in his hands and Wang Daoyuan was personally controlling it. So what if he killed the 3 of them? Scarlet Fox gave a few more instructions and Wu Yi set off with the 3 of them towards the Carriage Gorge to set up an ambush. After arriving at the Carriage Gorge, the 4 of them set up an ambush on a mountain 5 kilometers west of the Carriage Gorge. There were many small mountains on the east side and the terrain was relatively flat. The west side had high mountains and dense forests which were convenient for concealment. After waiting for 5 days, a caravan finally arrived at the south side of the Carriage Gorge. This caravan had a total of 9 carriages and a total of 18 cultivators driving and escorting the carriages. The 4 of them immediately executed the earth escape technique and arrived at the side of the Carriage Gorge. When the caravan entered the Carriage Gorge, the 4 of them were only around 2,000 feet away from the Carriage Gorge and discovered that the 18 people in the caravan were all Qi refinement cultivators. When the caravan arrived at the north end of the Carriage Gorge, they had no choice but to stop. The gorge's entrance was blocked by a huge rock that was over 100 feet tall and as wide as the gorge. Wu Yi transmitted his voice to the other 3 people. This huge rock isn't something that Qi refinement cultivators can move. In a while, there will definitely be foundation establishment cultivators coming out to move the huge rock. As long as there are mid-stage or early-stage foundation establishment cultivators that come out, immediately attack and kill them. If you can kill one of the other foundation establishment cultivators, it will be easy for us to fight 4 against 3. One of the 3 asked via voice transmission, "Then what are you doing?" Wu Yi reprimanded via voice transmission. "If any of you have the confidence to kill a 7-stage foundation establishment cultivator, I can make the first move. If you don't have the ability, then shut up and listen to orders. If you don't listen to orders and cause the mission to fail, when the Hall Master and Vice Hall Master pursue the matter, I might be severely punished and all of you will definitely die." Blood Shadow's punishment for disobeying orders was extremely severe. If the mission failed because of disobeying orders, the person who disobeyed orders would definitely die. The 3 of them stopped talking and quietly waited for the target to appear. Chapter 289. After the caravan stopped in front of the boulder, a few peak stage Qi refinement cultivators who were escorting the caravan took out superhuman strength talismans and pushed the boulder. This boulder was at least 40 to 50 kilograms. Wu Yi and the rest had also pushed it down from a high place. Furthermore, it was stuck between the walls of the canyon. Even foundation establishment cultivators could not move it, let alone these Qi refinement cultivators. The peak stage Qi refinement cultivators pushed for a long time, but the boulder did not move at all. Even when they cast spells to attack the boulder, they only managed to get rid of some rock shards. If this continued, it would probably take 10 days to half a month to shatter the boulder. One of the escorting cultivators ran to the middle carriage and said a few words to it. Soon, a foundation establishment cultivator at the 3rd level walked out of the carriage. He came to the boulder and pushed it a few times, but the boulder still did not move at all. He told everyone to retreat, then took out his flying sword and slashed at the boulder. Just as his flying sword hit the boulder, 3 sword beams flew over from the west side of the canyon. The cultivator did not have time to withdraw his sword and immediately cast a defensive spell. Unfortunately, he was too slow. Before he could cast his spell, the 3 sword beams had arrived. His entire body was sliced into 4 parts by the 3 sword beams, and the ground was dyed red. His flying sword hit the boulder. This boulder was not very hard for a foundation establishment cultivator, and a 1-foot-deep sword mark was left on it. The person died and the flying sword lost control, getting stuck on the boulder. The Qi refinement cultivator was so frightened that he ran back the way he came. The 3 foundation establishment cultivators that Wu Yi brought with him laughed and appeared. One of them said, "These resources are ours." An old voice came from the 2nd carriage. "A few brats. You're too naive." Before he finished speaking, a sword flew out of the carriage. The 3 of them also controlled their flying swords and blocked this attack together. At this moment, 2 more flying swords flew out from the 4th and 8th carriages, attacking Blood Shadow and the other 2. The 3 of them recalled their flying swords. They did not have time to defend and could only dodge in a sorry state. In the caravan, 3 foundation establishment cultivators had already walked out of the carriage. They were at the 7th level, 5th level and 3rd level respectively. The 7th level foundation establishment cultivator was a white-haired old man, the 5th level foundation establishment cultivator was a middle-aged man, and the 3rd level foundation establishment cultivator was a young man. Wang Daoyuan sensed the situation of his doppelganger Wu Yi and was secretly shocked by Blood Shadow's ability to gather information. This caravan should have set off from Golden Goose City 4 or 5 days ago, but Blood Shadow was able to get the accurate information 10 days ago. It seemed that Golden Goose City had also been infiltrated by Blood Shadow. The white-haired old man from the underworld sect said, "With this old man here, the 3 Dao you can forget about taking away this batch of resources. I can forgive you for killing my men. You'd better leave quickly so that you don't lose your life." A cultivator from Blood Shadow laughed and said, "Old man, if you know what's good for you, then hurry up and leave. If he ran away now, he would still be able to keep his life. By the time we make our move, it will be too late for you to leave." The 3 from the Netherworld sect took back their flying swords and then sent them out again. The 3 from Blood Shadow also sent out their flying swords, confronting their opponents head-on. This time it was a one-on-one fight. On the Netherworld sect's side, the white-haired old man directly defeated his opponent, the middle-aged cultivator had a slight advantage, and the 3rd-level foundation building cultivator was only at a disadvantage, but not completely defeated. At this time, Wang Daoyuan completely took over the command of his doppelganger. He was somewhat speechless. These idiots' combat power was really trash. A 6th level foundation building cultivator against a 7th level foundation building cultivator. It was understandable that he couldn't win, but what did it mean to be crushed? Naturally, he wouldn't make his move now. He would wait until the 3 from Blood Shadow died in battle, and it would be best if 1 or 2 cultivators from the Netherworld sect died before making his move. In order to prevent the 3 from running away directly, he transmitted his voice. This 7th level foundation building cultivator from the Netherworld sect is not ordinary. I'm not sure I can beat him in a head-on fight. If we drag on for too long, the reinforcements from the Netherworld sect will arrive, and we'll all die. If we want to take him down as soon as possible, we can only launch a sneak attack. You guys force out his weakness and I'll try to injure him severely in one blow. The 3 of them cursed Wu Yi's 18 generations of ancestors in their hearts, but now they were in a difficult position. If they ran away they would definitely die. Their only hope was that Wu Yi's sneak attack would succeed. 2 of them besieged the white-haired old man, trying to force out his weakness, while the other held back the middle-aged and young cultivators. The attacks of Blood Shadow and the other 2 were too simple. They only had some Dharma spells that were fast and stealthy but not powerful enough. Sneak attacks were fine, but in a head-on fight they couldn't exert much combat power at all. After a few minutes, the cultivator from Blood Shadow who was holding back the middle-aged and young cultivators couldn't take it anymore. He was pierced back and forth by the flying sword several times and died. The other 2 joined forces to fight the white-haired old man, but they could only gain a slight upper hand. It would be difficult for them to win even if they fought for another 2 hours. Now the situation had become 2 against 3. With the white-haired old man around, it would be difficult for the 2 of them to escape. The 2 cultivators from the Netherworld sect who were free to take on an opponent for the white-haired old man. 100 breaths later, the white-haired old man cast a few Dharma spells consecutively, severely injuring his opponent. Of the 3 from Blood Shadow, only 1 of them was intact. Wang Daoyuan didn't dare to delay any longer. If the 2 of them lost their combat power, Wu Yi's doppelganger wouldn't be able to deal with the 3 of them. At that moment, the white-haired old man was chasing after the heavily injured cultivator from Blood Shadow. He controlled his doppelganger and used the myriad sword art to attack the middle-aged cultivator. His doppelganger wasn't strong enough. Even if he succeeded in sneak attacking the white-haired old man, it would be difficult to kill him in a single strike. Instead of injuring all 10 of his fingers, it was better to break 1 of his fingers. The young cultivator was too weak and there was no point in killing him. The best target was the middle-aged cultivator. Dozens of sword chi phantoms shot over and the middle-aged cultivator cast a defensive Dharma spell to defend against them. His casting speed was fast enough and he successfully cast the golden armor art. However, it was still insufficient in the face of the myriad sword art. The phantoms of the longswords attacked him. The middle-aged cultivator's golden armor art could only block 5 of the phantoms of the longswords before it was shattered. The phantoms of the longswords behind him sliced him into pieces. At that moment, the white-haired old man had also finished off the heavily injured cultivator from Blood Shadow. When he saw that his companion was killed, he was furious. It was now 2 against 2 and Blood Shadow had the upper hand in terms of cultivation. Wang Daoyuan smiled. I'll leave that level 3 foundation establishment to you. Kill him as soon as possible and we'll work together to kill this level 7 foundation establishment cultivator. After we're done, we'll split this batch of resources equally. Hearing that, the Blood Shadow cultivator became spirited. Although he was a subordinate of Deputy Hall Master Shen Martin, he wasn't from Blood Shadow's headquarters. Instead, he was a local cultivator roped in by Shen Martin. He joined Blood Shadow just to make a living and get benefits. Why couldn't he follow anyone else? Wang Daoyuan naturally didn't want the last Blood Shadow cultivator to live. When dealing with the white-haired old man, he didn't take the initiative to attack. Instead, he used stalling tactics to give him a chance to sneak attack the Blood Shadow cultivator. The Blood Shadow cultivator attacked the young cultivator wildly. The young cultivator was only at level 3 foundation establishment and was soon beaten to the point where he couldn't fight back. The white-haired old man was anxious. Wu Yi alone was enough to stall him. If another one came, he would definitely die. He condensed the phantoms of the flaming lion to stall Wu Yi and charged towards the Blood Shadow cultivator. Seeing this scene through his doppelganger, Wang Daoyuan smiled. The cultivators of the Netherworld sect really knew him well. He did not stop the white-haired old man. Instead, he shattered the phantoms of the flaming lion and charged towards the young cultivator on his sword. When he arrived before the young cultivator, he channeled the flying sword beneath his feet and released a few phantoms of the sword, killing the young cultivator. On the other side, the white-haired old man released a flame as well, burning the blood shadow cultivator into ashes. Wang Daoyuan was delighted. The mission given by Scarlet Fox was completed, and the next step was to take care of this white-haired old man. The white-haired old man smiled. Daoyu, leave now, and Netherworld sect will let bygones be bygones. How about that? Wu Yi smiled without replying and released the 10,000 sword art once more. For the sake of speed, he only condensed 5 phantoms of the sword. The white-haired old man immediately controlled his sword and shattered the phantoms of the sword. Wu Yi seized the opportunity to release heaven-cleaving sword. 6 breaths later, a gigantic sword phantom that was more than 100 feet long appeared and slashed towards the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was also a wily old fox. He could tell that even though the gigantic sword phantom was powerful, it wasn't fast enough. He controlled his sword to avoid the direction of the gigantic sword phantom's attack and hid behind a gigantic rock. At the same time, he began to accumulate spirit energy in preparation to release a powerful dermic art. Wang Daoyuan controlled his doppelganger and changed the direction of the gigantic sword phantom instantly while increasing its speed. The gigantic sword slashed down towards the gigantic rock, and the white-haired old man was sliced into 2 together. Chapter 290. The Foundation Establishment cultivators were all dead and the Qi Refinement cultivators had fled. Wu Yi was the only one alive. He collected the storage pouches of the Foundation Establishment cultivators, then searched through all 9 carriages. Most of the things in the carriages were raw materials, refined weapon refinement materials, grade 1 and grade 2 elixirs, etc. Right now, Wang Daoyuan was in urgent need of grade 3 elixirs so that he could gather enough for the Meridian Protecting Elixir to become an inferior grade 3 elixir refinement master. The ordinary grade 2 elixirs of Netherworld sect were not of much use to him. However, there were a few superior grade 2 elixirs that were of great use to him. Wang Daoyuan controlled his clone, Wu Yi, to take some of the superior grade 2 elixirs and weapon refinement materials. He did not dare to take too much. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if the Vice Hall Master pursued the matter. Not taking anything was not the style of itinerant cultivators. Furthermore, Wang Daoyuan was not rich right now. He only had slightly more than 200,000 spirit stones on hand. If he wanted to exchange for the yin-yang purple jade from Blood Shadow, he would need 600,000 to 700,000 spirit stones per piece. Even if he took some from his family, he would still be short of money. He had to try his best to earn more spirit stones. Even a mosquito's leg was meat. These things could be worth a lot of spirit stones as well. He could not keep the resources he intercepted with him either. Instead, he stored them in storage bags and hid them east of Carriage Gorge, not far from where Wang Daoyuan was hiding. After searching the corpses and hiding the loot, Wu Yi sent a message to Scarlet Fox, reporting the success of the operation and requesting the Hall Master to send someone over to receive them. After all, he did not have the ability to take away all 9 carriages of items alone, especially those weapon refinement materials which were extremely dense. A lump of metal material that was about a foot in diameter already exceeded the upper limit of the storage bag's capacity. He would need at least 100 to 200 storage bags to take away all of these items. After the news spread, more than 10 peak Qi refinement cultivators rushed out of the forest west of Carriage Gorge in less than 15 minutes. Each of them had around 20 storage bags on them. The leader cupped his fists towards Wu Yi. Lord Wu Yi, we were sent by the Hall Master to receive you. These people were clean-up cultivators specially groomed by Blood Shadow. Although their cultivation talents were not great, they were extremely good at cleaning up traces, moving and hiding the loot. Assassinations and robberies like this were usually coordinated by cultivators who would deal with the aftermath. Their arrival was equivalent to handing over the goods. As for the rest of the matter, there was no need for action cultivators to participate. Wu Yi didn't care about that anymore and immediately fled on his sword. Wang Daoyuan took the loot that Wu Yi had hidden near him and escaped underground. He and his doppelganger did not immediately return to Wild Goose City Square. Instead, they lingered around the city square for a few days before entering the city square from the east. This was because the eastern part of the market was the half-fiends' territory. The half-fiends were in a state of disunity and were neutral. Therefore, most itinerant cultivators liked to mingle in this area. The itinerant cultivators who entered and left the market from the east were the most numerous. Hence, they would not be conspicuous among the itinerant cultivators. Wang Daoyuan had just returned to the market when he heard the news. The cultivators of the Netherworld sect were furious and had sent cultivators to cause trouble for the Beiyuan sword sect. The Beiyuan sword sect was also confused. They were sitting in the mountains, but the trouble came from the sky. The Beiyuan sword sect explained the situation to the Netherworld sect through the half-demon tribes that they had business with. The late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators of the Beiyuan sword sect had not come out recently. Their sect's inheritance was very widespread and there were many people who knew one or two moves. Someone must have framed them. How could the cultivators of the Netherworld sect believe their enemies? The people and things at the scene of the incident did not even have ashes left. Only a huge rock that had been cut in half was split in half by a sword. From the marks left on the ground, it was obviously caused by the heaven-cleaving sword. For the heaven-cleaving sword to be so powerful, it was definitely not something that an itinerant cultivator who had learned one or two moves could do. The Beiyuan sword sect was speechless. Without the sword kinesis technique that was unique to the Beiyuan sword sect, the heaven-cleaving sword was not very powerful. The people of the Beiyuan sword sect also received the news that Wang Daoyuan knew the Beiyuan sword sect's dharma spells and they were very powerful. They used Wang Daoyuan as an example. The Netherworld sect did not care about them at all. The Wang family was in the limelight in the Netherworld sect and was deeply trusted by the sect master. Within the Netherworld sect, the Wang family had Purple Mansion elders and disciples who were under the tutelage of the native elders. They also held positions in the Netherworld sect. This treatment was better than most of the family members and outsiders. Besides, the Wang family started out as a miner and had always been worried about where to sell their ores. In recent years, they had expanded their territory in the sky/mountain range and opened up hundreds of acres of spirit fields. They also did not lack spirit herbs. Giving up a good future and risking the destruction of his family to rob the Netherworld sect of resources, and resources that he did not need. Anyone with a brain would not do such a stupid thing. Was Wang Daoyuan a fool? Who said that he was a fool? Those who had dealt with Wang Daoyuan before would vomit in their faces. Especially the cultivators of the Cruel Sun Palace. They had been cheated badly during the duel between the two sections. And the goods from the Netherworld sect were at most 100,000 spirit stones. After the Wang family built the flying boat, there were rumors that Wang Daoyuan was proficient in alchemy, artifact and talisman arrays. Would such a person lack spirit stones? If he could reach the level of a second-level superior grade alchemy, artifact and talisman array master, earning 10 or 20,000 spirit stones a year would be like child's play. Wang Daoyuan could do all three and was also proficient in array formations. Would such a person risk his life for a mere 100,000 spirit stones? No one would believe that it was Wang Daoyuan who did it. The blame was firmly pinned on the head of the Beiyuan sword sect and there was no way to shake it off. The situation in the Shanbei Mountains that had been peaceful for a few years was stirred up once more. The Netherworld sect used this as an excuse to increase the garrison strength of the Guiyan market. This time round, the Netherworld sect had a sufficient reason and it was the Shanbei Mountains that took the initiative to stir up trouble. As long as the matter was not blown out of proportion, the demons and half-demons could not say anything. Wang Daoyuan also returned to his own crafting workshop and started crafting artifacts. What did Blood Shadow have to do with me if he pretended to be someone from the Beiyuan sword sect to rob the Netherworld sect of their resources? The clone Wu Yi returned to the underground hideout of Blood Shadow and arrived at the meeting hall. Scarlet Fox sat high above while the Vice Hall Master, Xian Martin, sat on the left. Both of them wore masks and their expressions could not be seen. Wu Yi bowed. "Greetings, Hall Master." He then bowed to Xian Martin. "Greetings, Vice Hall Master." Scarlet Fox said calmly, "No need for formalities. You did well this time round. Not only did you complete the mission, you also had the Beiyuan sword sect to take the blame." Even though she tried her best to control her voice so that others could not hear anything, her entire body was trembling slightly. It was obvious that she was extremely emotional. Wang Daoyuan, the clone of Wu Yi with his panoramic perception, saw something that he should not have seen and circulated his water spirit energy to calm himself down. The Vice Hall Master, Xian Martin, asked coldly, "Wu Yi, you came back unscathed while the 3 people I sent out are dead. Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" This Vice Hall Master's voice was rather pleasant to the ears. Wu Yi did not hide anything and recounted the entire process of the battle. The rule of Blood Shadow was that it only depended on whether the mission could be completed. The life and death of manpower did not matter. It was perfectly normal for him to let the 3 of them hold back the Netherworld sect cultivators while he waited for an opportunity to strike. Xian Martin had nothing to say and snorted coldly before walking out of the meeting hall. Only Wu Yi and Scarlet Fox were left in the hall. Scarlet Fox laughed heartily and her entire body was trembling violently. Even though Wu Yi was extremely afraid of her, his qi and blood were unstable at this moment. On the other side, Wang Daoyuan seemed extremely calm after consuming more than 10 black jade lotus seeds in a single breath. After laughing for a long time, Scarlet Fox said to Wu Yi, "There's a total of 90,000 spirit stones in this batch of resources. Since the other 3 are dead, you'll get half of it. I'll round it up for you and give you 50,000 spirit stones." With that, Scarlet Fox walked out of the hall. Thereafter, Wu Yi heard Scarlet Fox's voice transmission through her spirit consciousness. "Come to my cave abode at night. I have something to discuss." Those words could easily cause a misunderstanding. Even a gentleman like Wang Daoyuan could not help but think in the wrong direction. Chapter 291. At night, Wu Yi quietly arrived at the entrance of Scarlet Fox's cave. Scarlet Fox was a dignified Zifu realm cultivator. Her divine sense was extremely powerful and she naturally discovered that Wu Yi was outside. Wu Yi was just about to knock when the door to the cave opened. Scarlet Fox's voice sounded by his ear, "Come in." Wu Yi walked into the cave and the door behind him immediately closed. Just like last time, Scarlet Fox sat beside the stone table with her legs crossed. The only difference was that there was a wine jar and 2 wine bowls on the stone table. She was drinking wine. Wu Yi bowed and said, "Greetings, Hall Master." Seeing Wu Yi walk in, she waved her jade hand and the wine flew out of the jar and landed in a bowl. Scarlet Fox smiled, "No need to be so courteous, drink." Before she finished speaking, the wine bowl that was just filled flew towards Wu Yi. He caught the wine bowl and drained it in one gulp. Scarlet Fox was wearing a mask and naturally couldn't drink wine normally. The wine in the bowl formed a stream of water and entered through the gap between her neck and the mask. She then made a swallowing motion. After drinking the wine, Scarlet Fox no longer had the solemnity she had in the meeting hall and actually started to dance like a little girl. In the end, she actually walked in front of Wu Yi without caring about her image and patted his shoulder, smiling, "You've really made me proud this time. You took the resources of the Netherworld sect cleanly and even took care of that bitch's subordinates. Since that bitch came to the Shanbei branch, she's been causing trouble for me. This time she finally suffered in your hands. What I didn't expect was that you could even drag the Origin Sword sect in as a scapegoat and even save me the trouble of dealing with the aftermath." At this moment, the two of them were more than a foot apart. Wu Yi was also somewhat unable to control himself at this moment. His heartbeat was rapidly rising and his face started to turn red. On the other side, Wang Daoyuan took out a handful of inky jade lotus seeds from the space and directly stuffed them into his mouth without even counting them. He swallowed them and started to refine them. He relied on the yin qi within the lotus seeds to suppress his rampaging qi and blood. Suddenly he felt that his nose was slightly hot. He wiped his nose and looked at his fingers. Then he covered his nose and said, "This clone is really useless." He couldn't control himself just like that. "I only had some red snot flow and my heart was completely unaffected. This old man has lived for 2 lifetimes and has lived for more than 100 years. What kind of situation has this old man not seen? How could he be defeated by such a small trick?" After saying that, he cast rejuvenation on his nose. The effect of rejuvenation was pretty good. The red snot immediately stopped flowing. Crimson Fox noticed Wu Yi's abnormality as well, and realized that he had lost his composure. She quickly sat back down on the stone chair and took out a storage bag saying, "This is your reward this time, a total of 50,000 spirit stones. There's also a steward's token inside. From now on you're the 4th steward of the Shanbei branch." He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Hall Master." Crimson Fox said with a light smile, "So long as you remember that you're my subordinate and work well for me, you'll absolutely have no lack of benefits. Now that you're a manager, you need more people. I don't have enough people on my side, so I can't transfer them to you. It's better if you recruit them yourself." The members of the Shanbei branch were mainly divided into 2 groups. One was the external affairs cultivator, and the other was the direct cultivator. There were many cultivators in charge of external affairs, including Qi refinement cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators. These cultivators were under the command of various stewards. Usually, the Blood Shadow assassins outside were this group of people. The direct subordinates were directly led by the Hall Master and Vice Hall Master. Some of these direct subordinates were brought over from the headquarters, while some were promoted by ordinary assassins. These people were outstanding in certain aspects such as strong combat strength, well-informed information, and those who dealt with the aftermath. They were all direct subordinates. They were the direct subordinates that the Hall Master and Vice Hall Master focused on nurturing. They were also the seedlings for future stewards. Usually they wouldn't carry out assassination missions but would deal with the aftermath. When the external affairs cultivators failed the mission and leaked the news, they would be dealt with by the direct subordinates. The 3 cultivators who were killed by Wu Yi were the direct subordinates of the Vice Hall Master. However, they were just promoted from ordinary assassins and weren't brave enough. After being scared by Wu Yi, they were terrified. It wasn't easy to nurture direct subordinates. Not only did they have to be capable, but they also had to be loyal. This was also the reason why Crimson Fox was so happy. Before Wu Yi, there were a total of 3 stewards in the Shanbei branch. The Vice Hall Master had 2 subordinates, while Crimson Fox only had 1 subordinate, Yu Lang, who didn't listen to orders. The cultivators that Crimson Fox nurtured herself were either roped in or killed by the Vice Hall Master. In order to prevent all her subordinates from being killed, she took in most of her trusted subordinates as her direct subordinates, leaving only a few who weren't in an important position under Yu Lang. Previously, Wu Yi was the external affairs cultivator under Yu Lang. Now Wu Yi was the 4th steward. At the very least, in terms of the number of stewards, Crimson Fox could compete with the Mystic Marten. Of course, Crimson Fox was still far behind in terms of middle and bottom level cultivators. Wu Yi said solemnly, "I won't let you down, Hall Master." Crimson Fox waved his hand. "You may leave. Whether or not I can suppress the Vice Hall Master will depend on you." Wu Yi left gratefully and returned to his cave abode to prepare for the recruitment of subordinates. After that, there wasn't much to pay attention to on Wu Yi's side. Wang Daoyuan began to do his own work. After all, he had to do business since he was running a weapon refinement shop. He was still hoping to earn spirit stones from refining weapons to exchange for yin-yang purple jade, so he had to do his business well. The 6 storage bags that Wu Yi's clone obtained from searching the corpse and some of the resources were all in his hands. These 7 people were not very rich. In the 7 storage bags, there were only a little more than 20,000 spirit stones. There were not many elixirs, spirit talismans and other items. The only dermic weapon was a sword for each of them. Since they were not itinerant cultivators, it was normal for them to not have many items with them. Together, all of those dermic weapons were worth around 30,000 spirit stones. However, he could not sell those items directly and had to change their appearances and refine them. Just as he was refining the 7 swords, a customer arrived. It was the half-demon woman from the White Fox tribe. She brought 2 young and beautiful women with her and walked straight to the backyard. When she saw that Wang Daoyuan was refining weapons, she did not dare to disturb him. There was a rule of not revealing one's abilities in the various arts of immortal cultivation. She would naturally not violate that taboo. Wang Daoyuan had already noticed her arrival and was refining one of the swords in his hands. After forging it into shape, he was not in a hurry to inscribe patterns and went out to welcome her. After exiting the weapon refinement shop, he cupped his hands and said, "Daoyu, I am honored by your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." The woman smiled and said, "Daoyu, you don't have to be so polite. My name is Beiyuan, you can just call me by my name. I'm here to ask Daoyu to help me refine a few dermic weapons. I've brought all the materials and requirements." Beiyuan handed the 2 storage bags to Wang Daoyuan and continued, "I saw that Wu Daoyu was also alone, so I brought 2 juniors from the tribe to take care of Daoyu." Wang Daoyuan took the storage bags and said, "I'll take the job but forget about the people. I've already sent a message to an old friend of mine. After a while he will come over to help me. My friend is also a weapon refinement master so he can help me and look after the shop. Miss Bai, you don't have to worry about it." Beiyuan was instantly interested and asked, "I wonder if Daoyu is willing to become friends with the White Fox tribe." Chapter 292. Wang Daoyuan had a strange expression on his face. Is the White Fox tribe trying to improve their breeds? Why are they always looking for someone to marry into their family? He replied, "My friend is also focused on cultivation and is not interested in the matters between men and women. I'm really sorry." Beiyuan looked disappointed. "That's too bad. If any of Wu Daoyu's friends have such intentions, Wu Daoyu can help to act as a go-between." Wang Daoyuan was completely speechless. No matter what, he was the mastermind behind the changes in Shanbei. Why did the people of the White Fox tribe think that he was a matchmaker? If he had known this would happen, he would rather die of poverty than rent a shop in the White Fox tribe. However, the shop's location was not bad and business was really good. He had not been in the shop for the past few days because of Wu Yi's clone. However, he still sold 2 Dharma weapons and earned 5,000 to 6,000 spirit stones. After sending Beiyuan away, Wang Daoyuan opened 2 storage bags. One of them contained a few upper-grade and middle-grade level 2 materials for refining Dharma weapons, while the other one contained 4 jade slips. Fox demons were one of the few species that were famous for their divine consciousness and were proficient in the art of seduction. The half-demon of the white fox tribe might also have such an inheritance. He did not dare to check the jade slips rashly in case he fell into the trap of the white fox tribe. He sent the jade slips into the space of the spirit pearl for his clone, Bai Sheng, to check. After Bai Sheng checked the jade slips, he did not find anything wrong. The 4 jade slips each recorded the refining method of a Dharma weapon. One of them was a longsword, one was a shield, one was a jade hairpin, and one was a flying Dharma weapon. The longsword and shield were refined with slightly different materials, but there was nothing else. The jade hairpin was a support-type Dharma weapon, but it was required to be able to attack, defend, and assist in cultivation. Its attacking effect was similar to that of a flying sword. Its defensive function was to create a defensive light shield, assist in cultivation, and add on a spirit-gathering function. It was not difficult to have a single function. However, it was more difficult to have 3 functions. The more functions there were, the more tool patterns were required. The jade hairpin was only a few inches long and was not even as thick as a chopstick. One could imagine how difficult it would be to inscribe so many tool inscriptions in such a small space. Moreover, different tool patterns with different functions would interfere with each other. The closer he got, the stronger the interference. Wang Daoyuan was rather excited about the last type of flying Dharma artifact. The legacy of blacksmithing in his hands was relatively ordinary. Even the crafting techniques recorded in the 5 Elements spiritual master's experience were not of a high level. After all, the 5 Elements Taoist majored in the art of array formations. He only practiced the art of refining for the convenience of refining array cores. The artifacts recorded in his artifact forging technique were relatively common and simple, and there were very few types. It could be considered as a textbook for third-rank blacksmiths. There was no problem in using it to raise the level of blacksmithing, but in terms of practical application, the textbook was completely insufficient. Lei Yanjinren's refining experience only recorded how to raise one's refining level, and did not specifically introduce the refining method of a particular Dharma artifact. The refining legacy given by the Netherworld sect was even worse. It could barely be used as a textbook. Although Wang Daoyuan's refining skills were not low, the types of magic tools that he could refine were still too few, and his refining methods were too simple. This was especially so for tool patterns, which he had mastered were relatively common. Of course, if he knew the principles and combination of these tool patterns, he could study other formation patterns. However, it would take a long time. With reference, he could improve on the foundation of the existing tool patterns, and the efficiency would be much higher. The 4 jade slips that Beiyuan had given him were of great value to him as a reference. This was especially so for the flying Dharma artifact, which was extremely valuable. This flying Dharma artifact was also a boat-type Dharma artifact, but it was different from a flying boat. The core function of a flying boat was achieved by an array formation. This flying Dharma artifact was called the crane feather boat, and its flying function was achieved by the tool patterns and the characteristics of the materials used. Compared to a flying boat, the crane feather boat was extremely small. It was only 5 feet long and 1 foot wide, and its load was also very small. It could only accommodate 3 people at most. The crane feather boat had an advantage over a flying boat, and that was its speed of flight. At its normal speed, it could reach more than 3,000 miles in 2 hours. At full power, it could reach more than 4,000 miles in 2 hours, which was even faster than a flying warship of the same level. Ordinary late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators could only fly less than 3,000 miles in 2 hours. Flying on the crane feather boat consumed much less spiritual power than sword kinesis flight. Moreover, when driving the crane feather boat, one only needed to inject spiritual power into it, and did not need to consume spiritual power. It was more suitable for continuous flight. The crane feather boat also had many fatal flaws. Its function was too simple and it was especially fragile. Although it was an upper-grade Tier 2 Dharma artifact, its strength was weaker than most low-grade Tier 2 Dharma artifacts. In a battle of magical powers, it was a fragile object. An early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator could easily injure it with a casual sword gleam. This Dharma artifact was only suitable for transportation. If it was taken out in battle, the chances of it being destroyed were extremely high. Of course, this crane feather boat still had a lot of room for growth. After studying it thoroughly, he could improve it. For example, he could improve the tool patterns, replace stronger materials, and add some other functions. These were all things that he could work on in the future. The most important thing now was to understand the refining method of the crane feather boat. After seeing the refining method of the crane feather boat, he focused all his attention on the crane feather boat and was not interested in the other 3 Dharma artifacts. It would take too much time for him to refine the crane feather boat alone. It was time to let Beiyuan out. This shop was the territory of the White Fox tribe. Although there were no surveillance devices in the shop, it was inevitable that there would be people watching. If someone suddenly appeared, it would be hard to explain. To be safe, he changed into the attire of a rogue cultivator and left Wild Goose Market. He found a quiet place and let out his clone, Beiyuan. After that, the two of them returned to Wild Goose Market's Wu Weapon Workshop and began to study the refining method of the crane feather boat. There were 2 main materials for the crane feather boat: upper-grade Tier 2 crane demon bird's wings and tail feathers and light cloud wood. Light cloud wood was an upper-grade Tier 2 spiritual wood. In terms of strength, it was probably the weakest among Tier 2 spiritual wood. Of course, light cloud wood was not completely useless. Its biggest advantage was that it was very light. Its density was not much higher than feathers. The reason why the crane feather boat could float in the air was mainly because of the crane feather boat's unique tool patterns. The crane feather boat's buoyancy was not very strong. It also needed to carry people, so it had to reduce the weight of the materials as much as possible. Therefore, light cloud wood was used as the main material. The value of the crane feather boat and light cloud would lay in the characteristics of the materials. Therefore, during the refining process, it was necessary to preserve the characteristics of the materials as much as possible. Smelting and forging were not necessary. They could only remove the impurities in the raw materials and shape the light cloud wood into a suitable shape. These tasks did not require high attainments in refining weapons. With Beiyuan's attainments in refining weapons that were close to upper-grade Tier 2, it was not difficult to handle these tasks. Wang Daoyuan's task was to inscribe tool patterns on the light cloud wood and the crane feather boat. It was not difficult to inscribe formation patterns on the light cloud wood, but it was difficult to inscribe formation patterns on the crane feather boat. Each feather was very thin and not very strong. The chisel knife was also very sharp. With a little force, it could cut the feather into pieces. The difficulty of inscribing tool patterns on the crane feather boat could be imagined. Finally, the crane feather boat had to be assembled and placed on the light cloud wood. There were 5 sets of crane feather boat materials sent by Beiyuan. As long as he handed over 1 crane feather boat, he would receive 3,000 spiritual stones as a reward. With the help of Beiyuan's doppelganger, Wang Daoyuan was under much less pressure. He only failed twice. On the 3rd try, he successfully refined a crane feather boat. From beginning to end, it only took slightly more than a month. Chapter 293. The White Fox tribe gave him 5 sets of materials and only asked for a crane feather boat. Naturally, the reward was not high, only 3,000 spirit stones. An upper-grade level 2 magic weapon with special functions was worth more than 10,000 spirit stones. The 2 level 2 blacksmiths spent more than a month and only earned 3,000 spirit stones. It was a big loss. However, the refining method of the crane feather boat and the tool pattern to assist in flight were not something that could be measured with a few thousand spirit stones. He was not in a hurry to refine the remaining 2 sets of materials. The current crane feather boat had too many flaws and it would not be interesting to refine it. It was better to refine it after some improvement. Furthermore, he promised the White Fox tribe to keep it a secret. If he used the crane feather boat outside, he would offend them. Although the White Fox tribe was not a powerful force, it would be easy for them to deal with him. After refining the crane feather boat, the next step was to refine the jasper hairpin. The main material of the jasper hairpin was not rare. Jasper was a common upper-grade level 2 jade material. Its strength was not low, but it was not high either. The other party had more requirements for the functions of the jasper hairpin, but the refining method was already given in the jade slip, so there was no need for him to think about it. The tool pattern was a very basic type. The only valuable thing was the way to deal with the conflict between the tool patterns. With the way to deal with the conflict between the tool patterns, he would be able to give the tool many functions in the future. He spent half a month and only failed once. On his 2nd try, he successfully refined a upper-grade level 2 jasper hairpin. He was given 5 sets of materials and the remaining 3 sets were for him. The reward was 2,000 spirit stones. The shield was the least technical. It was just a hard material. After refining the metal material and forging it into shape, all he had to do was to inscribe the defensive array pattern. He was given 3 sets of materials, but Wang Daoyuan succeeded on his 1st try. He only took 3 days to complete the refinement. The reward was 1,000 spirit stones, which was a big profit. The long sword was called the Autumn Water Sword. It was a water-attributed magic weapon and there was nothing special about the tool pattern. However, water-attributed long swords generally did not have much lethality. Water-attributed and wood-attributed cultivators would not use flying swords as their main magic weapon. This Autumn Water Sword was a fancy job in terms of materials. It completely smelted water-attributed materials, extracted their essence, and smelted them into relatively strong non-attributed metal materials, forging a metal longsword with water-attributed spiritual energy as the main element. Although the lethality of the Autumn Water Sword forged in this way was much weaker than that of a gold fire attribute flying sword, it was much stronger than ordinary water attribute magic tools. This kind of refining method of destroying the main material, extracting its essence, and then injecting it into other materials required a high level of purification of the material. It was often used to refine magic tools of the water and wood attribute. This kind of refining was not considered rare, but Wang Daoyuan's 2 Tier 3 legacy sets did not have it. Refining the Autumn Water Sword could be considered as making up for one of his shortcomings in refining tools. It wasn't too difficult to refine. He used 5 or 6 days and failed once to refine the Autumn Water Sword. There were a total of 3 sets of materials and he only had 1 set left. The reward was 1,000 spirit stones. The 4 magical tools were all completed in 2.5 months. The reward was 9,000 spirit stones. He did not earn many spirit stones, but the materials and refining methods were very valuable. Wang Daoyuan informed Bai Ying through Fu Qing to come and collect the magical tools. A day later, Bai Ying came to the workshop with 2 half-demon women who were even prettier than the previous one. Wang Daoyuan handed the 4 magical tools to her. She took them, checked them and put them in her storage bag. Bai Ying smiled. I didn't expect Wu Daoyu to be so fast in refining weapons. In just 2 months you've refined 4 magical tools. This is the reward I promised Daoyu. With that, she handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan. He took the storage bag and put it away without even looking at it. He smiled. This time, I was able to refine 4 magical tools so quickly because of my friend's help. She had brought 2 half-demon beauties with her because she wanted Bai Sheng. There were definitely people from the White Fox tribe watching the shop. Bai Sheng could not hide from her in the Wu clan's workshop. However, Bai Ying was good at acting. After hearing Wang Daoyuan's words, her eyes lit up and she quickly asked, Is Wu Daoyu's friend here? Can I meet him? Bai Sheng walked out of the workshop. Bai Ying immediately went up to him and asked enthusiastically, May I know Daoyu's name? Do you have a Dao companion? Bai Sheng smiled. I'm Bai Sheng. Greetings, Daoyu. I'm focused on cultivation and have no intention of getting married. Bai Ying looked disappointed. That's a pity. My name is Bai Ying. I have the same surname as Daoyu. We're family. Wang Daoyuan was speechless. Bai Sheng's surname was Bai. The White Fox tribe's surname was Bai because their ancestors were white foxes. Half-demons had the surname Chui. Bai Ying did not give up and continued to attack Bai Sheng. After a long time, Bai Sheng was still unmoved. Bai Ying had no choice but to give up and leave the shop with the 2 half-demon women. Bai Sheng continued to reforge the 7 long swords that he had obtained from killing people. His refining skills were very close to 2nd-tier superior grade. He needed more practice. Wang Daoyuan himself was studying the crane feather boat, trying to improve its refining method. 3 days later, Bai Ying came again. She walked straight into the shop and saw Wang Daoyuan. She smiled. Wu Daoyu, I'm here to disturb you again. Wang Daoyuan smiled. I'm very grateful that Miss Bai is here to take care of my business. There's no need to disturb me. Bai Ying handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan and said solemnly, This is no small matter. Daoyu, please don't tell anyone about it. Wang Daoyuan nodded. Don't worry, Miss Bai. I know the rules. Since I've promised to keep it a secret, I won't tell anyone. After Bai Ying left, Wang Daoyuan opened his storage pouch. Inside there were 2 gourds, some high-grade Tier 2 materials and a jade slip. Wang Daoyuan took out the jade slip and kept it in the space of the spiritual pearl. He handed it to his clone to check. There was nothing left in the jade slip. The jade slip recorded the refining method of a gourd magic weapon. This magic weapon was called the Demon Subduing Gourd. Using divine sense and spiritual power to activate the gourd, one could subdue demonic beasts. This magic weapon was not strange. If it was south of Mount Huiyin, it would be normal for someone to use this gourd. But this was the north of the mountain, the territory of the demon race. Whoever dared to use this magic weapon would be hunted to death by the demon race. Could it be that the White Fox tribe wanted to cause trouble? The territory of the White Fox tribe was about 10,000 miles northeast of Clear Glass City. It was not far from the periphery of the Sky/Mountain Range. Although the half-demons were neutral, they did not allow outsiders to enter their territory. Therefore, the outside world did not know much about the situation of the White Fox tribe. Maybe the White Fox tribe was threatened by demonic beasts, or maybe they had the same idea as the Wang family and wanted to explore the periphery of the Sky/Mountain Range. This matter had nothing to do with him. The White Fox tribe was more than 5,000 miles north of Mount Huiyin. The Wang family did not intend to go beyond Mount Huiyin and expand to the north of the mountain. No matter how much trouble the White Fox tribe caused, it would not affect the Wang family. He only wanted to do business. Why should he care about the White Fox tribe? However, these two gourds were a pleasant surprise. To refine a weapon, he needed to take out the gourd seeds. Now, he could add a new type of spiritual plant to the space of the spiritual pearl. Moreover, the weapon pattern and technique required to refine the demon-subduing gourd were all things that Wang Daoyuan did not know. He was willing to do such a good thing for free. Moreover, there was a reward of 5,000 spirit stones. Chapter 294. These two gourds were the Mystic Essence Gourd. The grade of the gourd vine would increase with age and could reach middle grade, grade 3 at the highest. Gourds could be refined into many types of dermic weapons, especially an attributeless gourd like the Mystic Essence Gourd. The most common type was to nurture flying swords, flying daggers, and other dermic weapons in the gourd to increase the power of the dermic weapon. There were also gourds that could contain water, fire, poison, fog, and other things. The blazing gourd on Mount Jade Pine had a flame transformation tool pattern inscribed on it and was a common gourd dermic weapon. Any gourd could be used to refine spatial treasures. These two Mystic Essence Gourds were both superior grade, grade 2, and spatial treasures refined directly could only be low-grade spatial treasures on the same level as storage bags. If he could hire a grade 3 weapon refinement master, he could use the smelting technique to refine the Autumn Water Sword. By refining the essence of grade 3 materials and fusing them into the gourd, he could refine a high-grade spatial treasure. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan was only a superior grade, grade 2 weapon refinement master. From grade 2 to grade 3, elixir, weapon, and talisman arrays were a huge hurdle and it was difficult to cross it. Grade 3 materials were hard to find, and without sufficient materials to practice, it would be even harder to cross this hurdle. Given his skill in weapon refinement, he could only refine superior grade, grade 2 dermic weapons. A superior grade, grade 2 demon-subduing gourd would have no problem dealing with grade 2 demonic beasts. The method to refine the demon-subduing gourd and the tool pattern on it were clearly recorded in the jade slip. There were 3 types of tool patterns. The first was to suppress the soul. To subdue a demonic beast, one had to first weaken its resistance. A demonic beast's body was strong but its soul was weak. Attacking its soul was the best way to subdue it. The second type was the spatial tool pattern. It was similar to the tool patterns on storage bags and universe rings. After all, the gourd was only so big. To contain a demonic beast, one had to expand the internal space. The spatial tool pattern on the demon-subduing gourd had another special feature. It had to have an extremely strong collecting ability. After all, subduing a demonic beast was not as simple as putting things in storage bags. Even if its soul was suppressed, it would still have some resistance. To store it into the space, one had to have a strong suction force. The third type was to strengthen the tool pattern to increase the strength of the gourd. Demonic beasts that were sucked into the gourd would surely struggle. Since the gourd itself wasn't strong enough, it was only natural that it had to be strengthened through smithing. The gourd was about a foot long, and it wasn't difficult to inscribe 3 types of tool inscriptions on it. Bai Ying's storage pouch contained 2 gourds and a few jade slips, as well as a few superior grade 2 materials. According to the forging method recorded in the jade slip, the essence of these forging materials was to be extracted and fused into the gourd to increase its strength. The spiritual power contained in these 2 gourds was of no attribute, which made them suitable for refining with the essence of other refining materials. The smelting method was not difficult, and Bai Sheng could do it. To refine a magic tool with a gourd, one had to first clean out the gourd pulp and gourd seeds. Ranked spirit plants and spirit beasts would have a much lower reproductive ability. There were only a dozen gourd seeds in the 2 gourds. Wang Daoyuan stored the gourd seeds in the spiritual bead and planted them near the spiritual fire of life. After Bai Sheng fused the essence of several refining materials into the gourd, Wang Daoyuan personally inscribed the tool pattern on the gourd. After the first gourd was refined, there were some serious mistakes when inscribing the tool pattern. He tried his best to salvage it so it wasn't completely destroyed, but its grade dropped to intermediate grade 2. A intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd could be used to subdue intermediate grade 2 demonic beasts, and it was considered a powerful grade 2 magic tool. A intermediate grade 2 magic tool couldn't be handed over, but it could be sold outside for 4,000 to 5,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan adjusted his state and began the second refinement. With the experience from the first refinement, he didn't make any major mistakes in the second refinement. He used 7 days to refine an advanced grade 2 demon subduing gourd. It only took him 20 days to refine 2 magic tools. Although there were no more materials left, the reward of 5,000 spirit stones was not bad. Moreover, he could sell the intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd to Beiyuan at the market price for a total of 10,000 spirit stones. He had to admit that he had a certain level of proficiency in alchemy, smithing, and talisman. Earning spirit stones was a piece of cake for him. However, his current situation was special. He was being paid to refine magic tools for the White Fox tribe. He didn't have to consider the source of materials or the sales channel of the magic tools. Most advanced grade 2 weapon refinement masters didn't have such treatment. It was difficult to gather materials for a magic tool in a few months if he relied on purchasing materials himself. Even if he refined a magic tool, it would take some time before he could sell it. After refining the demon subduing gourd, Wang Daoyuan went to greet Beiyuan through Fucheng. This time Beiyuan was faster. She arrived in a hurry after half a day. She didn't bring the half-demon beauty with her this time. She came alone. After entering the shop, Wang Daoyuan closed the door and activated the defense array. Seeing how serious he was, Beiyuan teased, "Wu Daoyu, aren't you afraid of being misunderstood by others?" Wang Daoyuan smiled. "Miss Bai, if you want others to know that the White Fox tribe is looking for me to refine the demon subduing gourd, I can also close the array formation and the door of the shop." Beiyuan couldn't laugh immediately and cupped her fists. "Wu Daoyu, please don't take offense. I was just joking. Have you refined the magic tool?" Wang Daoyuan took out an advanced grade 2 demon subduing gourd from the weapon refinement room and handed it to Beiyuan. Beiyuan took the gourd and observed it carefully. Daoyu's weapon refinement technique is getting better. There are no obvious flaws on this demon subduing gourd. This is the reward Daoyu deserves. With that said, she handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan took the storage bag and hung it on his waist. He asked, "There were some mistakes with the other gourd. In the end, I only managed to refine an intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd. I don't dare to use such a magic tool in the northern mountains. Do you want it, Miss Bai?" Beiyuan replied without hesitation, "Of course I want it. I can buy it according to the market price. However, I'll have to check the quality of the item first." Before she finished her sentence, she took out the intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd. Beiyuan snatched the demon subduing gourd and observed it carefully. She even injected spirit energy into it to activate it. Since the item had yet to acknowledge an owner, it wouldn't have much of an effect. However, she could tell the grade of the entire magic tool with just a trace of spirit energy fluctuation. Eventually Beiyuan nodded. "Daoyu is truly capable. To think that you could make up for a major mistake in the inscription of the tool pattern to such an extent. Although this magic tool is of intermediate grade 2, it's made of advanced grade 2 materials. In actual fact, it's stronger than ordinary intermediate grade 2 magic tools. Our White Fox tribe wants to work with Daoyu for a long time, so we naturally won't let Daoyu suffer a loss. This intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd will be priced at 6,000 spirit stones. What do you think, Daoyu?" That was a very generous price, and Wang Daoyuan naturally had no objections. Beiyuan took out 60 middle-grade spirit stones from a storage bag and handed them to Wang Daoyuan. Both gourds were spatial magic tools and couldn't be kept in storage bags. It would be too ostentatious to take them out in the open. She put the 2 gourds into a box and left the Wu clan's weapon workshop with it. Chapter 295. In the following days, Beiyuan did not look for Wang Daoyuan to refine weapons. He did not idle around and train Beisheng every day. Because the clone's soul had been severely injured, its original consciousness was erased and the soul had taken over. After all, the soul was not the same as the clone's original soul. No matter how brilliant the secret art was, it could not allow them to merge perfectly. The clone was weaker in anything related to the soul, especially in terms of comprehension. Alchemy, smithing, and talisman arrays required a high level of comprehension. Beisheng's soul was problematic and his comprehension was poor. That was why he could not make a breakthrough in smithing. Wang Daoyuan gave him dozens of black jade lotus seeds, but there was no change. If his comprehension was not good, then he could use numbers to make up for it. Bai Sheng's biggest shortcoming now was inscribing weapon patterns. Wang Daoyuan continued to forge weapon embryos and gave them to Bai Sheng to inscribe. Of course, these weapon embryos were made of metal. Even if the inscription failed, they could be reforged and there would not be too much loss. Through Fu Cheng's connections, Wang Daoyuan contacted a few shops that provided spirit charcoal and smithing materials. There were many second-grade smithing materials in the smithing workshop. After 3 months of high-intensity training, Bai Sheng's success rate of inscribing weapon patterns finally reached 40%. His standard of refining materials and forging had long reached the standard of an upper-grade rank 2 smithing master. Now that he had made up for his shortcoming of inscribing weapon patterns, he naturally became a true upper-grade rank 2 smithing master. Bai Sheng's smithing skills were good enough, so Wang Daoyuan did not need to keep an eye on him. He could focus on Wu Yi's clone. Wu Yi was now the steward and knew more about blood shadow. He knew that yin-yang purple jade could not be exchanged with spirit stones. Apart from spirit stones, one also needed the corresponding contribution points. Spirit stones were not a problem. Wang Daoyuan opened a smithing workshop and secretly sold some elixirs and talismans. It was not a problem for him to earn hundreds of thousands of spirit stones a year. Even if he bought 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade, it would take him more than 10 years to earn enough spirit stones. However, it was difficult to obtain contribution points. According to Blood Shadow's rules, there was a set of rules for obtaining contribution points. One could not directly use spirit stones to exchange for contribution points. Blood Shadow was an external affairs cultivator. Half of the bounty obtained from killing a bounty target belonged to Blood Shadow, while the other half belonged to the cultivator himself. The number of spirit stones one handed over was the number of contribution points one would receive. Wu Yi had worked hard for decades, but he only had around 100,000 contribution points. The cultivators of the branch needed 700,000 spirit stones and 350,000 contribution points to exchange for the yin-yang purple jade or the purple cloudwood core. In other words, he had to complete the mission and obtain a reward of 700,000 spiritual stones in order to obtain 350,000 contribution points. Apart from that, the Hall Master's approval was required to exchange for the yin-yang purple jade. As a trusted aide that Crimson Fox had nurtured, it wasn't a problem for Wu Yi's clone to obtain the Hall Master's acknowledgement. However, it was too difficult to obtain 350,000 contribution points, which was equivalent to 700,000 contribution points. If he personally went out to do bounty missions, it would take him at least 20 to 30 years to gather enough contribution points. Other than that, there was another shortcut. This shortcut could only be taken by a steward. After the external affairs cultivators under the steward completed a bounty mission, the steward would receive a 5% commission from the contribution points obtained. It didn't mean much to have few cultivators under one's command. However, if there were many cultivators under one's command, the total number would be considerable. Apart from that, every time a cultivator was recruited into Blood Shadow, the steward would also receive a certain amount of contribution points. Recruiting Qi refinement cultivators would give him 100 to 500 contribution points. Recruiting Foundation establishment cultivators would give him 2,000 to 5,000 contribution points. Therefore, if he wanted to obtain the yin-yang purple jade as soon as possible, he had to do his best to be a steward. Only by recruiting more subordinates could he obtain contribution points faster. Wang Daoyuan was speechless. He had made his clone Wu Yi go undercover in order to obtain the yin-yang purple jade from Blood Shadow. Initially, he was going to take advantage of the situation. However, not only did he not take advantage of the situation, he even recruited cultivators to strengthen Blood Shadow. It was truly touching for him to be a spy to this extent. Blood Shadow could not recruit people openly like ordinary factions. They had to hide their secrets. As such, the difficulty was very high. If he wanted to recruit people without revealing Blood Shadow's secrets, he had to ensure that the people Wu Yi recruited were either willing to join Blood Shadow or die. Killing people would cause a huge commotion, so he had to ensure the success rate of roping them in. This required a deep understanding of itinerant cultivators to know which ones were willing to join Blood Shadow. There was one person who could be used to determine whether a disbanded cultivator was willing to join Blood Shadow, and that was Fu Cheng. This kid had grown up in Guiyan Market. Ever since he embarked on the path of cultivation, he had been dealing with itinerant cultivators and knew them very well. He could quickly determine which cultivators were willing to join Blood Shadow. Most of the brokers in Guiyan Market did not have any backing. They only had 2 sources of income. One was to maintain a cooperative relationship with various shops to attract business for them and receive some commission. The other was to run errands for cultivators who came to Guiyuan market for the first time. These cultivators could more or less give them some remuneration. These two businesses were not easy to do. It was fine when the situation was stable. However, once the situation was unstable and itinerant cultivators did not dare to enter the market easily, these brokers could only starve. Therefore, the success rate of roping Fu Cheng into Blood Shadow was still very high. Wang Daoyuan was determined to get Fu Cheng. It would be best if he agreed to join Blood Shadow. However, if he did not agree, he could only refine him into a clone. Before making a move, he had to understand Fu Cheng's situation first. If this kid was one of the very few brokers with backing and he rashly tried to rope him in, it would be troublesome. In the next few days, Wang Daoyuan no longer stayed in the weapon workshop. Instead, he disguised himself as an itinerant cultivator and watched Fu Cheng from behind. After 3 days of investigation, he found out that Fu Cheng indeed did not have any backing. Moreover, Fu Cheng was not alone. He had 2 sons. His sons were not old and were only in their teens. One was a mortal while the other had a spirit root, but his talent was similar to his. With family there would be worries, and with worries there would be weaknesses. After figuring out Fu Cheng's situation, Wang Daoyuan returned to the weapon workshop. The task of roping Fu Cheng into Blood Shadow was handed over to Wu Yi, the manager. In the evening, Wu Yi left the Immortal's welcome house and went to Fu Cheng's house to wait for him. After dark, Fu Cheng returned home and shouted, "Eldest second, come out and eat." After saying that, he took out 2 bowls of spiritual grains from the storage bag at his waist and placed them on the table in the courtyard. The 2 half-grown children ran out of the house and each picked up a bowl to eat. Wu Yi threw a spirit stone which happened to land on the table. Fu Cheng protected his sons behind him and cupped his hands. "Senior, may I know which one of you is here? Please give me your orders." Wu Yi's clone walked out of the shadows and said, "I need your help with something. Help me find a place where we can talk." Fu Cheng brought Wu Yi to the Taurus Inn. Wu Yi booked a superior room and set up a soundproof formation. He said, "I'm here because I have a great fortune to give you." Upon hearing this, Fu Cheng turned pale with fright. He immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. "Senior, please spare my life. Junior's cultivation level is low, so I can only make some money by introducing businesses. I can't earn any great fortune." Wu Yi was half persuading and half threatening him. "Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for that cultivator son of yours. Don't tell me you want him to be like you and waste his whole life? Your cultivation path is hopeless, but your son is still young. If you agree to help me, your son will have better cultivation techniques and sufficient cultivation resources. It won't be impossible for him to build his foundation in the future. You're a smart person. If you don't agree, you know the consequences." Chapter 296. Fu Cheng looked like he was struggling. He wanted to refuse, but he didn't dare. He didn't have any backing, so he couldn't resist the coercion of a foundation establishment cultivator. Besides, his cultivation level was low and he didn't know anything about cultivation. His only value was that he was well informed. The person in front of him wanted him to do things for him, but it was only to help him gather information in Guiyuan market. The risk wasn't high and it wasn't much different from what he was doing now. If he followed the person in front of him, he would at most be implicated and lose the lives of the 3 of them. As long as the person in front of him didn't fall, the possibility of this happening wasn't high. If he agreed, the risk wouldn't be too high, and he would even get more cultivation resources. If he didn't agree, the 3 of them would die now. Fu Cheng gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He bowed and said, "Junior is willing to follow Senior and go through hell for Senior." Wu Yi said with a smile, "You are indeed a smart person. I won't let my people suffer losses. You don't have the qualifications to officially join the force behind me, and you don't even have the qualifications to know the name of the force. But as long as you can complete the task I give you, joining the force won't be a problem. As for your cultivator son, as long as he cultivates to the peak of chi refinement and contributes enough, he will get the chance to build his foundation. Your mortal son can also live a rich life. What I need you to do is very simple. You just need to help me find some people. These people have good talent and the potential to improve. They desire to improve their cultivation, but they lack resources and don't have a way to earn spirit stones. The best cultivation level is between the late stage of chi refinement and the middle stage of foundation establishment. I believe that with your ability, it won't be hard to find such people. People who had the potential and desire to improve their cultivation, but were extremely lacking in resources, were more likely to take risks. Such people wouldn't be the least concerned about danger. As long as they saw hope, they would be willing to do anything. The success rate of roping in such people was higher. Hearing Wu Yi's words, Fu Qing sighed in relief. He only wanted him to find people and not do anything dangerous. This task didn't conflict with his current job, and there wasn't any danger. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, although Junior isn't talented, finding people is my specialty. But after Junior finds them, how should I deal with them and how should I inform Senior?" Wu Yi smiled and said, "You don't need to do anything. Just do what you usually do. You just need to remember the target's whereabouts and situation. When I contact you, just tell me the target's situation. This is a small gift for our first meeting. As long as you work hard for me, your good days are still ahead." Then he handed a storage pouch to Fu Qing. Fu Qing accepted the storage pouch and bowed. "Thank you for your rewards, Senior. I will definitely do my best and not hesitate to go through fire and water." Wu Yi sent him away and continued to stay at the Golden Bull Inn. There were many Vice Hall Masters in Blood Shadow's stronghold, the Welcoming Immortals Tower. It was too dangerous to cause trouble there. It was better to do it at the Golden Bull Tavern. Fu Qing left the inn and returned home. He opened the storage bag and saw what was inside. He couldn't believe his eyes. Inside the storage bag were 1,000 spirit stones and 100 essence-gathering pills. Fu Qing relied on running errands to attract business. Under normal circumstances, his monthly income was only 20 to 30 spirit stones. With these spirit stones, he had to feed 3 people and buy cultivation resources. There weren't many spirit stones left. Sometimes it might not be enough. He had never had more than 100 spirit stones in his hands. Now he actually had 1,000 spirit stones and 100 essence-gathering pills. He didn't even dare to think about having so many resources. Wu Yi had just casually given him so many resources. This made Fu Qing even more reverent of the force behind Wu Yi. A powerful and mysterious force was even more difficult to get rid of, and there wouldn't be a situation where he was implicated. He was even more determined to join this force. As long as he could become an official member, his descendants wouldn't have to run around for a few spirit stones like him in the future. A month later, Wu Yi came to Fu Cheng's house again. Fu Cheng's ability to get things done was indeed not weak. In this month he had found more than 10 targets that were passable. Among these targets, there were cultivators from the late stage of Qi refinement to the mid-stage of foundation establishment. After all, Fu Cheng was only a mid-stage Qi refinement cultivator. He wasn't very clear about the situation of foundation establishment cultivators. The situation of several foundation establishment cultivators was relatively simple. Since he didn't know much, the success rate of roping in these foundation establishment cultivators directly wouldn't be too high. He needed to observe for a period of time and figure out their specific situation before slowly roping them in. On the other hand, those late-stage Qi refinement cultivators who weren't even 70 years old still had hope of reaching foundation establishment. Their need for resources was even more urgent. Furthermore, these people would be more loyal to him after being nurtured. In the past, Wang Daoyuan wanted to get 1 or 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade and run away. However, Blood Shadow didn't know what was good for them. They set these bullish *T rules and caused him to have to help them expand their strength in order to obtain yin-yang purple jade. It would be a pity if he only obtained 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade after spending so much effort. He had to make sure that he did not expose his true form and take advantage of Blood Shadow. He even had to cultivate a force that was loyal to him within Blood Shadow. If possible, he had to turn Blood Shadow into a stable channel for him to obtain yin-yang purple jade. This was more difficult. At the very least, he had to deal with Scarlet Fox. Without the cooperation of a direct descendant of Blood Shadow, he couldn't even think about it. It was better to choose a late-stage Qi refinement cultivator for the first time to rope in Blood Shadow. Among the candidates that Fu Qing had provided, one was especially suitable. His name was Hu Jing and he was an itinerant cultivator. He was about 60 years old and was at level 9 Qi refinement. He was not proficient in the arts of cultivation and mainly relied on finding spirit herbs to earn resources. Under such circumstances, it was clear that this person was not weak to be able to reach level 9 Qi refinement. He was only 10 years away from his last chance to reach foundation establishment at 70 years old. Under such circumstances, there was still hope for him to reach foundation establishment. However, for itinerant cultivators who did not have any skills, the chances were extremely slim. He might know that his chances were slim, but he was unwilling to give up. According to Fu Cheng's intelligence, Hu Jing still frequently entered the mountains to search for spirit herbs and had no intention of giving up. People who realized that their chances were slim but were unwilling were the best to rope in. It was like a drowning person who would grab onto a straw with all his might. Wu Yi asked Fu Cheng to bring him to the Golden Bull Inn. After bringing him to Wu Yi's room, Fu Qing bade farewell and left. Hu Jing cupped his fists towards Wu Yi and said, "May I know why you've summoned me here, senior?" Wu Yi smiled and asked, "May I know if my little friend wants to reach Foundation establishment?" Hearing this, Hu Jing was stunned and said with a bitter smile, "Which Qi refinement cultivator doesn't want to reach Foundation establishment? It's just that how many people can successfully reach Foundation establishment with their own abilities?" Wu Yi smiled and said, "I can give you a chance, but whether or not you can succeed will depend on your own performance. I don't lack Foundation establishment pills, but Foundation establishment pills have to be given to useful people." Hearing this, Hu Jing's eyes lit up and he bowed solemnly, "If senior can give me the chance to reach Foundation establishment, I'm willing to be an ox or a horse to repay senior's great kindness." Wu Yi was secretly delighted. This kind of person was indeed easy to rope in. With his words, the matter of recruitment could be considered half completed. The rest would depend on how bold this brat was. He said unhurriedly, "Help me do some work that licks blood from the edge of the blade. Earning spirit stones is not a problem. As long as you can show your worth, even if you can't gather enough spirit stones to buy a Foundation establishment pill by the time you're 70 years old, I can still give you one." Hu Jing hesitated for a moment. Finally, his eyes shone with determination and he said, "No matter how dangerous it is, I'm willing." Chapter 297. Wu Yi was secretly delighted. It was a success. He handed a jade scroll to Hu Jing and said, "Follow the instructions inside. If you do a good job, you can join the force behind me and become my direct subordinate." Hu Jing took the jade scroll and used his divine sense to check it. After a while, Hu Jing cupped his hands and asked, "Senior, how should we deal with this person after killing him?" Wu Yi nodded in satisfaction. This was a smart person. He was not greedy for spirit stones. He was worth nurturing. He smiled and said, "It's good that you can think this way. However, you don't have to worry about anything else. Just follow the instructions in the Jade Scroll and arrive at the designated place at the designated time. Leave after killing him. I'll arrange for people to take care of this. My subordinates don't have to worry about these trivial matters. They just have to focus on killing." Hu Jing nodded heavily, bowed and left the place. The person he wanted to assassinate was the intelligence chief of the Redbeard Bandits. After Wu Yi defeated the underworld sect's caravan, the situation in Shanbei was unstable. If he provoked the underworld sect or the Beiyuan sword sect now, a war might break out. Apart from these two parties, the small human forces in Shanbei already had a hard time. After all, they were the pioneers of the human race. Everyone who expanded the living space for the human race was worthy of respect. Wang Daoyuan did not have time to help them, but he did not want to take advantage of them either. If he could not touch the human forces, he could not touch the half-demon forces either. Most of them were neutral. If he provoked them, he would be causing trouble for the human race in Shanbei. If he provoked the demons, it would be even riskier. These people were not to be trifled with. If he provoked them, another war between the human race and the demon race might break out. In the entire Shanbei, the only people he could touch were the itinerant cultivators and the Redbeard Bandits. The itinerant cultivators did not have high bounties. The best targets were the Redbeard Bandits. The Redbeard Bandits were hated by everyone in Shanbei and Shanbei. The main targets of the Redbeard Bandits were the small human forces and the weak half-demon tribes. They rarely touched the demon race in the large sections. Wang Daoyuan had no emotional pressure to find trouble with the Redbeard Bandits. Moreover, these people had caused too much trouble. Many forces had put a bounty on their heads. With all kinds of bounties added up, a small Qi condensation leader was worth thousands of spirit stones. Hu Jing's target was a small leader in charge of intelligence. In terms of status, he could be said to be in the top 3 under the foundation building realm. With a bounty of 5,000 spirit stones, his value was comparable to that of an ordinary foundation building cultivator. The Redbeard Bandits had planted many spies in the returning Wild Goose City Square. The head of the intelligence network was also stationed in the city square for a long period of time to gather information about the various factions. Small matters could be sent through jade talismans, but Zifu disciples could intercept low-grade jade talismans. Therefore, whenever there was important information, the intelligence chief would personally run to Huiyen Mountain to pass on the message. Blood Shadow had bribed a few of the Redbeard Bandit spies and found out that the Redbeard Bandits had recently obtained a few important pieces of information. The head of the intelligence agency was planning to personally report the situation, so it was a good opportunity to intercept and kill them. In the past, Blood Shadow didn't have the confidence to deal with the Crimson Beard Bandits. Firstly, it was because of the issue of strength. Zifu disciples couldn't be easily dealt with, and 3 late-stage Foundation establishment stewards added together weren't enough for the Crimson Beard bandits. Secondly, he wanted to continue rearing pigs. An assassin organization like Blood Shadow would only have more business when the situation was unstable. When the situation was calm and everyone was busy developing, who would put out a bounty for killing? The Red Beard bandits were a troublemaker. Only when the situation was unstable would Blood Shadow have more business. Scarlet Fox didn't want to take down the Red Beard bandits, but he didn't forbid his subordinates from attacking them either. Others didn't have the motivation or ability to kill the Red Beard bandits, but Wang Daoyuan did. If he wanted to quickly gather 350,000 contribution points, the best goal was to wipe out the entire Red Beard bandits. Just the Red Beard bandits alone were worth 600,000 spirit stones. In addition to the 5 Foundation establishment leaders, this was more than the price of a yin-yang purple jade. At present, Wang Daoyuan didn't have much of a chance of winning against just one of the Red Beard bandits, let alone 2 of them working together. However, he was only at the 7th stage of Foundation establishment. Once his cultivation reached the 9th stage, it wouldn't be a big problem. During this period of time, he would refine a few late-stage Foundation establishment clones. When the time came, he would bring the clones to cripple the Red Beard bandits and let Wu Yi pick up the heads. Then he would have a yin-yang purple jade. He estimated that it would take more than 10 years for his cultivation to reach the 9th stage of Foundation establishment. By then, Wu Yi's subordinates should have a certain scale. The contribution points that he had accumulated over 10 years wouldn't be too far away from a yin-yang purple jade. After taking down the Red Beard bandits, he would have 2 yin-yang purple jades. 3 days later, Hu Jing came to Wu Yi's room at the Tourist Tavern and took out a head from his storage bag. It was the head of the Red Beard bandits' intelligence leader. After checking it, Wu Yi put away the head and handed him 2,500 spirit stones. He said, "According to the rules of the organization behind me, after completing a bounty mission, the executor will receive half of the reward and the other half will belong to the organization. I'll give you contribution points for handing over the bounty. Not only do you need spirit stones to purchase important resources like Foundation establishment pills from the organization, but you also need contribution points. You have 2,500 contribution points now. According to the rules, I can take 5% of the contribution points. However, this is your first mission, so I won't take any. Stay here and don't move around. I'll go and report your information. When the higher-ups issue your command token, you'll be considered an official member of the organization." After he finished speaking, he left the Tourist Tavern and took a few detours before returning to the Welcome Immortals Tower to meet Scarlet Fox. When he arrived at Scarlet Fox's cave, he handed the head of the Red Beard bandits leader to Scarlet Fox and reported Hu Jing's situation. Scarlet Fox asked, "You want to make a move on the Red Beard bandits?" Wu Yi smiled and said, "If I want to recruit people, I must have enough missions for them to complete. The Netherworld sect and Guiyuan Sword sect can't be provoked anymore. Otherwise, a war might break out and it won't be good for our business. However, provoking the Red Beard bandits is different. No matter how much we provoke them, it won't break out into a war. After killing a few small leaders, they'll definitely provoke a few large and medium-sized organizations to vent their anger. If the situation is a little more chaotic, our business will be better and we can even increase their bounty. You can't just raise pigs without eating meat. It's not bad to take out 1 or 2 pigs to eat meat occasionally." Scarlet Fox pondered for a moment and said, "Your idea is good. It's not worth it to let the Red Beard bandits loose. It's not bad to kill a few small leaders occasionally. You have a good eye. This Hu Jing is a promising talent." After she finished speaking, she took out a jade slip and used her divine sense to inscribe something on it. After a few minutes, she handed the jade slip to Wu Yi and said, "Give the jade slip to Green Wolf." Green Wolf was Scarlet Fox's direct subordinate. He was in charge of managing the personnel of the Shanbei branch and was in charge of managing the information of all branch members. New members had to report to him and he would issue a member token. Wu Yi took the jade slip and left the cave to look for Green Wolf. Green Wolf's cultivation was at the 5th layer of Foundation building. He basically didn't move around outside, so most assassins had never seen him before. Wu Yi handed the jade slip to him. He didn't say anything and took the jade slip to examine it with his divine sense. Then he took out a beast skin book. On the beast skin book was written 4th Manager. On the 3rd page he branded the information on the jade slip. Then he took out a blood shadow token and wrote something on the back of the token. 15 minutes later, he handed the token to Wu Yi and said, "Manager Wu, from now on, this Hu Jing is an outer member of our branch. Chapter 298. Wu Yi took the token and left the underground stronghold, heading to the Taurus Inn. When he arrived at his previous room, Hu Jing was still waiting there. Seeing Wu Yi come in, Hu Jing immediately cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, senior." Wu Yi smiled and said, "You are now my direct subordinate." Hu Jing's face was full of joy and was about to bow. Wu Yi said seriously, "Don't be anxious. Before that, I need to tell you the rules. First, you are not allowed to leak the name of the organization. Once it is leaked, the person who leaked it and the person who knows it will die. If you meet cultivators who know the existence of the organization, kill them if you can and report to me if you can't. Second, you don't need to contact any clients, and you don't need to accept any bounty missions outside. All your missions will be given to you by me. If you discover anything, report it to me. You are now an outer member, so this is all you need to know. After you reach Foundation establishment and become an inner member, you will be qualified to know more. Can you do these two things?" Hu Jing bowed and said, "I can do it." Wu Yi smiled with satisfaction. "Good, it's good that you can do it. From now on, you are the subordinate of the 4th steward of the Blood Shadow Mountains Northern Branch. I am the 4th steward, your immediate superior." Then he gave him a black iron token and said, "This is your token. Just drip a drop of blood on it and it will recognize you as its master. In the future, you don't need to look for me if you need anything. You can contact me through the token." Hu Jing bowed and said, "Greetings, steward." Wu Yi nodded and left the Taurus Inn. For safety's sake, he would change places and inns before continuing to recruit people. Wu Yi was already on the right track, and the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop was also overseen by Beiyuan. Wang Daoyuan was free now, and it was time to focus on improving his cultivation. Bai Ying of the White Fox tribe would come to the equipment forging workshop about every 4 or 5 months to ask Wang Daoyuan and Beiyuan to help her forge. The main material of the refining materials she sent was no longer the golden jade spirit plant, but the bones of demonic beasts. Based on these demon beast bones, Wang Daoyuan could tell that it was a wolf-type demon beast, but he couldn't tell its specific species. It seemed that the White Fox tribe was indeed attacking the demons. As a human, they naturally didn't mind watching the conflict between the demon race and the half-demon race. The more intense the fight, the better. Only when the demons and half-demons were crippled could the human race develop and grow stronger in the north of the mountain. There was no need for Wang Daoyuan to worry about refining weapons. Using demonic beast bones to refine artifacts, that was Beiyuan's specialty. Beiyuan's divine sense wasn't enough to complete the tool inscriptions on his own, so Wang Daoyuan had to do it personally. As a result, Wang Daoyuan had a lot of free time to cultivate in seclusion. 7 years later, he reached the 8th level of Foundation establishment. With his current abilities, he would not be at a disadvantage against most peak Foundation establishment cultivators. Beiyuan had also achieved remarkable results in the past few years. He had earned more than 100,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan also had more than 400,000 spirit stones in his hands. Wu Yi was not idle either. With Fu Cheng's help, the success rate of roping in rogue cultivators was very high. After 7 years, he already had more than 20 late-stage Qi refinement cultivators, 5 early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators and 1 mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator under him. Even though there was still a gap between him and the other 3 stewards, the speed at which he was expanding his strength was way too fast. The other 3 stewards only had a dozen or so Foundation establishment cultivators and 100 or so Qi refinement cultivators under them after decades of hard work. However, Wu Yi only took a few years to have a third of their strength. The Scarlet Fox relied on Wu Yi even more and gave him priority when the Shanbei branch received easy missions. Wu Yi had accumulated close to 100,000 contribution points in the past few years and was one step closer to redeeming the Yin-Yang Purple Jade. His cultivation had also increased slightly and was not far from Foundation Establishment Level 9. The Scarlet Beard Bandits were disgusted as well. No one touched Foundation Establishment cultivators when they went out, but Qi refinement cultivators were ambushed the moment they left the mountain. The Scarlet Beard Bandits had set up many ambushes but to no avail. The Qi refinement cultivators were all in danger and did not dare to leave the mountain. In order to boost their morale, the Scarlet Beard Bandits had mobilized many times to attack the small half-demon tribes and weak demons. The effect was very obvious. The Shanbei branch was in a state of panic and the bounty for the Scarlet Beard Bandits had increased by a lot. The bounty for the Scarlet Beard Bandits had also increased to 400,000 spirit stones. The Scarlet Beard Bandits were already busy enough. In order to prevent them from going crazy, it was time to change targets. One could not only catch one sheep, it would be a huge loss if the sheep was killed. Coincidentally, the conflict between the Beiyuan sword sect and the underworld sect had subsided. It was time to provoke them so that they would not be idle. Wang Daoyuan did not need to worry about the Scarlet Beard bandits and the weapon workshop. His strength was below the Violet Palace realm and it was not a problem for him to stay alive. It was time to go out and cause trouble. Wang Daoyuan still had a huge shortcoming, which was that he was not fast enough to escape. Although the cloud mist escape was brilliant and was very suitable for dodging ambushes in battle, it was not suitable for long-distance escape. Even in the river, his speed could not be compared to cultivators of the same level. In order to stay alive, he had to have a reliable escape method. It was not good for spirit beasts to appear in the Shanbei branch, and he did not have a better escape method. The only reliable method was to rely on magic tools. He had the method and materials to refine the crane feather boat, but the crane feather boat was too weak. In the past few years he had been thinking about how to improve the crane feather boat. The two materials for the crane feather boat were not good enough for him as they were too weak. He planned to use the golden jade peach wood to refine a flying magic tool similar to the crane feather boat. He did not have to worry about the buoyancy as he had a suitable solution. After some simple tests, he discovered that the aerodynamic principles from his previous life also existed in this world. Of course, his understanding of this principle in his previous life was limited to junior high school physics. He did not understand any more advanced knowledge. Simply put, if an object had a fast airflow above it and a slow airflow below it, the pressure below it would be greater than the airflow above it. The object would be forced upwards. As long as the force was strong enough, the object would be able to fly. The wings of airplanes and birds were raised at the top and flat or concave at the bottom. This caused the airflow above it to be faster than the airflow below it. The wings of airplanes and birds would be lifted upwards. If a flying magic tool was added with wings, regardless of whether it was a bird's wings or an airplane's wings, it would be able to generate lift during flight. This way, there would be no need for crane feathers which were naturally born with the ability to float. Furthermore, the main material would not be light cloud wood. He only knew the basic principle but did not know how to calculate the amount of lift. He could only slowly experiment. He wouldn't do experiments himself. With the time flow in the spirit orb, it would be foolish of him to do experiments outside of the spirit orb. He threw Bai Sheng into the spirit pearl space and let him research the most suitable shape for the flying magic tool. There was no need to change the tool pattern. The crane feather boat's tool pattern had to be changed a little, and the tool pattern to increase the strength was more or less enough. Every mature magic tool was created through the painstaking efforts of countless tool refinement masters. The shape, material, and tool pattern of the magic tool were all compatible with each other to achieve a balance. If he wanted to make a big change, he would have to put in a lot of effort. However, with the time flow 40 times faster and the tool refinement master's clone, Wang Daoyuan could still afford to play with it. Moreover, he did not need the magic tool to be perfect. As long as it could fly faster than all Foundation establishment cultivators and not be easily destroyed, it would be fine. Chapter 299. After that, Wang Daoyuan replaced Bai Sheng to look after the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop. In the past 7 years, Bai Sheng had made enough magic weapons. There were still more than 30 magic weapons left in the shop. For the time being, there was no need to replenish the stock. He only needed to take orders for magic weapons. Currently, Bai Ying was the only one who came to the shop to order magic weapons. If she did not come, there would be no one else. Wang Daoyuan simply meditated and cultivated in the shop. If anyone came, he would greet them. If no one came, he would focus on improving his cultivation level. Bai Ying came again midway and brought some wolf bones. She asked him to help her make a few flying swords. The flying swords were ordinary second-grade magic weapons. She did not give him the method of making them. She only mentioned some simple requirements. Using demonic beast bones to make weapons, the two processes of forging and refining were basically skipped. He just used the smelting method to fuse some metal essence into the wolf bones to increase their strength. In a month, Wang Daoyuan made 5 magic weapons and gave them to Bai Ying. Bai Ying only gave him a total of 7 sets of materials and asked him to make 2 flying swords. The reward was 5,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan made 5 magic weapons and sold 3 to Bai Ying at the market price. In total, he received more than 30,000 spirit stones. Half a year later, Bai Sheng stayed in the space of the spiritual pearl for 20 years and finally made a flying magic weapon. Because it was imitating the formation pattern of the crane feather boat, it took less time. If one were to create a magic tool from scratch, it would take at least 100 years to do so. This magic weapon did not have the shape of a flying boat at all. It looked more like an eagle with wings in the shape of an eagle's wings. The entire flying magic weapon was like an eagle catching prey on the ground. Its wings were half folded and it swooped down. This was also to increase its speed. Its length including the tail was 8 feet long. The tail was 2 feet long. Excluding the wings it was 3.5 feet wide. Because the wings were half folded, the wingspan was only 7.5 feet wide. The proportions of the body were not exactly based on eagle demonic beasts. Some adjustments were made. Bai Sheng had already engraved the pattern of the crane feather boat on it. In addition he had also engraved a pattern to increase its strength. In order to deceive the public, he even painted the entire artifact into a dark color that was commonly seen in eagle-type demon birds. Because it looked like an eagle, Wang Daoyuan named it Flying Kite. The space in the spiritual bead was still too small to be used to test the speed of the kite. He could only estimate its flying speed. At normal speeds, it could reach a speed of slightly more than 3,000 miles per hour. At full power, its speed could reach about 4,000 miles per hour. If he could reach this estimated speed, he would be able to surpass the maximum speed of a Foundation Establishment cultivator's sword kinesis flight, which would be considered to have achieved his goal. Because it had just been researched and hadn't been deeply improved, the consumption of spiritual energy was much greater than that of the crane feather boat. When riding a flying kite, the consumption of spiritual power was about the same as when riding a flying sword. Because it was faster than flying on the sword, the consumption of spiritual energy was more cost-effective. As for the load capacity, the flying kite could carry 2 people at most. In other aspects, it was similar to the crane feather boat from before. He only needed to use spiritual power to drive the kite to fly, and he only needed to use the power of his divine sense to control the direction of flight. This was much better than sword kinesis flight. The one that Bai Sheng took out was only an experimental product. The pattern on it had been improved a lot, but there were also many problems left. If he used it directly, it would be easy for problems to arise. To be safe, it was better to refine another one. After using a month's time, Wang Daoyuan refined a new flying kite. Because his divine sense cultivation was stronger than Bai Sheng's, his standard in the area of pattern was much higher, and there were fewer flaws. The strength of the flying kite that he personally refined could barely reach the level of a second-tier high-grade artifact. It was definitely much weaker than a second-tier high-grade defensive artifact, but compared to other types of artifacts, it wasn't much worse. Even a peak Foundation Establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to easily destroy a flying kite. Unfortunately, he didn't have any wind attribute materials. Otherwise, he could use the smelting method to extract the essence of the wind attribute materials and merge them into the wings of the kite. He could even directly use wind attribute materials to refine the wings, which should increase the speed by quite a bit. Moreover, the main material of this flying kite was only golden jade peach wood, which was too simple. If he could use soft materials on the wings, he could even change the width of the wings. Just like some of the fighter jets in his previous life, when taking off, the wings would stretch to the maximum to increase the lift and carry more people. When escaping, the wings would be half retracted to increase the speed. These were all areas of improvement in the future. Now that he didn't have so many materials on hand, it was already very good to be able to reach the current level. Wang Daoyuan was only a second-tier high-grade artifact refiner now. When his artifact refinement reached the 3rd tier, the flying kite's speed should increase by a lot if he improved it. After dealing with the flying boat, he left his clone, Bai Sheng, in the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop to continue earning spirit stones. He left the Guiyan market and went out to cause trouble. His destination was the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis, which was thousands of miles north of the Guiyan market. That old fellow, Qinji, was very likely hiding in the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis. To Wang Daoyuan, that bastard was always a hidden danger. He used Blood Shadow's intelligence system, but he didn't find anyone in Shanbei who had established a purple palace in the past few years. Therefore, Qinji should still be a peak Foundation Establishment cultivator. With Wang Daoyuan's current methods, he could defeat most peak Foundation Establishment cultivators. Qinji didn't need to think too much about the refined corpses and Dharma artifacts that he had inherited from the 10,000 Corpse spiritual master. A peak Foundation Establishment cultivator like him couldn't activate the Dharma artifacts left behind by a Golden Core cultivator. Even if Qinji could barely activate some 3rd-tier low-grade Dharma artifacts, he couldn't exert much power. Against a powerful 2nd-tier high-grade Dharma artifact, he couldn't crush it. Even if he couldn't defeat it, didn't he still have the flying kite? He could temporarily avoid it and rely on his speed advantage to contend with it. No matter how strong a Foundation Establishment cultivator was, He wasn't a Purple Palace cultivator. This was a qualitative difference. A Foundation establishment cultivator couldn't activate a third-tier Dharma artifact for a long time. As for the refined corpses, Qinji didn't dare to touch them at all. Refined corpses had a tendency to rebel against their masters. The more powerful they were, the higher the probability of them rebelling. If a Foundation establishment cultivator dared to command a golden core refined corpse, he would definitely be torn apart alive. Even if Qinji had refined corpses, they were newly refined after receiving the inheritance. The core inheritance of the myriad corpse Taoist was in his hands. Even if Qinji obtained some corpse refining techniques, he wouldn't be that strong. Not to mention, the Netherworld Sex Foundation establishment cultivator had caused a lot of trouble in the Mirror Treasured Lake. He should have clashed with Qinji and consumed a lot of his strength. Furthermore, he had the Wutu Divine Lightning. Dealing with second-tier refined corpses wouldn't be a problem. After leaving the returning Wild Goose Market, he traveled north for more than 500 kilometers and found a secluded place. He summoned the flying kite and tested its speed. After flying for 2 hours, he had traveled 3,500 kilometers. The limit of a peak Foundation establishment cultivator's flying speed was 3,500 kilometers in 2 hours. Wang Daoyuan wanted to test the limit of speed. He increased the input of spiritual power and flew north. The flying kite's speed also increased rapidly. When it reached 3,500 kilometers in 2 hours, the flying kite began to tremble violently. He didn't dare to continue increasing his speed. Instead, he slowly slowed down. He let out a long sigh. It wasn't easy to improve a flying Dharma artifact. Bai Sheng's clone had spent 20 years, but there were still hidden problems. Soon after, he controlled the flying kite and maintained its speed at 3,400 kilometers in 2 hours. After flying for several thousand kilometers, there were no signs of instability. Chapter 300. Wang Daoyuan wasn't sure what the problem was. The structure of the kite was simple. It mimicked the shape of an eagle. Its wings and tail were fixed, so there shouldn't be a problem. The eagle-type demon bird's flying speed was much faster than that of humans. The golden-winged demon bird's cultivation was at the mid-grade of the second rank. Flying 5,000 miles in 2 hours was like playing around, and he didn't see it shaking in the air. The runes used for flying were all copied from the crane feather boat. The crane feather boat was a mature magic tool, so the patterns wouldn't have any fatal flaws. The biggest possibility was that the patterns didn't match the shape of the kite. An upper-grade second-stage weapon refiner could improve the patterns, but it wasn't something that could be done in a day. In any case, this flying kite could fly for about 3,400 kilometers in 2 hours, which was enough for it to fly faster than a peak Foundation establishment cultivator. He didn't dare to go against a Zifu realm cultivator, so he didn't want to fly faster than one. As for solving the problem, he wasn't in a hurry. Once he was done with Shanbei, he would throw Bai Sheng into the spiritual pearl and let him study it. 1,000 miles south of the oasis, he put away the kite and flew on his sword. The oasis was located at the southern edge of the desert. The oasis was oval in shape. It was 500 miles long from east to west and 300 miles wide from north to south. The oasis was low-lying. There was a small mountain range in the north and south. The spring water on the mountain converged into streams that flowed to the center of the oasis, nourishing the basin between the two mountains. In the center of the oasis was a circular lake with a diameter of 100 miles. Because the two mountains surrounded the oasis, it was difficult for the wind to blow in. The surface of the lake was calm all year round, so it was called the Jewel Mirror Lake. There was an upper-grade second-stage non-elemental spiritual vein in the oasis. The south of the oasis was a sparse grassland while the other 3 sides were deserts. Under such circumstances, the oasis was worthy of being called a treasure land. The environment around the lake was harsh. There were no large groups of demon beasts or half-demon tribes nearby. It was said that many years ago, there was a group of demon beasts in the lake, but they were exterminated by the half-demons. After that, the lake became the territory of a half-demon tribe. Before the imperial family of Zhao was exterminated, they had crossed the Huiyin mountain many times to conquer the demon race and built many human strongholds in the north of the mountain. Many small forces of the human tribe in the northern mountains were left behind at that time. Where there were people and spiritual energy, there would be itinerant cultivators. Some desperados scurried around looking for a place to settle down. Several hundred years ago, a group of desperate rogue cultivators in the late stage of Foundation establishment discovered the Mirror Gem Lake Oasis. As for the half-demons who occupied this place, the strongest among them was only at the late Foundation establishment stage. They couldn't stop this group of desperados at all. In the end, the half-demon tribe either died or fled. This place became the territory of rogue cultivators. The spirit veins of the Jewel Mirror Lake Oasis were truly of a low grade. Zifu disciples and rank 3 monstrous beasts didn't care about this place at all, while rank 2 monstrous beasts didn't have the ability to take this place. Moreover, the Mirror Lake Oasis wasn't that big. Building a foundation here would have little future prospects. There weren't any powerful forces nearby, and the forces thousands of miles away didn't have to come all the way here just for a rank 2 spirit vein. As a result, the Mirror Lake Oasis became a place that no one cared about. After the reconciliation between the Ghost Sect and the Demon Tribe in the north of the mountain, the number of the Human Tribe in the north of the mountain rose sharply, and there were more rogue cultivators. Due to the uniqueness of the Mirror Lake Oasis, it attracted even more rogue cultivators. Desperados also liked to stay here. Many years ago, Chenji and Qiyun were one of these desperados. The eastern shore of the Mirror Lake was a market square. It was a bit of a stretch to call it a market square. There were only a few buildings that could barely be considered shops. Everyone else was setting up stalls. There were no rules here and no one was in charge. Some cultivators relied on their high cultivation to rob cultivators doing business, but no one cared. Once a conflict broke out, whoever won was in the right. If the others weren't strong enough, they could only blame themselves for being unlucky. This was a place where the strong were respected. The fist was the law. In the past, there were people who wanted to set rules here, but they were beaten to death. Wang Daoyuan stepped on the Tiger Fiend sword and landed at the edge of the market square. He wanted to find trouble with Chenji, so he had to understand the situation of this old fellow. A place like the market square where crooks mixed in with honest folk was the best place to gather information. As soon as he landed, a 9th-level Foundation establishment cultivator wearing a gray robe came forward. This guy didn't state his intentions and just stared at Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan was a bit scared. He used a disguise technique to change his appearance. It was different from when he was at the returning wild goose market, but he still looked like a middle-aged man. He didn't hide his cultivation. 8th-level Foundation establishment was enough to scare many people here. If his cultivation was too low, there would be a lot of trouble. He also didn't reveal anything unusual. This person kept staring at him, he didn't know what was wrong with him. Wang Daoyuan took a few steps to the right, wanting to go around the gray-robed cultivator. The gray-robed cultivator also took a few steps to the right, continuing to block the way. This guy was sincerely looking for trouble. Wang Daoyuan naturally couldn't back down. Rogue cultivators bullied the weak and feared the strong. If you gave in once, there would be more people coming to bully you. Wang Daoyuan asked, "Daoyu, what's the meaning of this? Tell me." The gray-robed cultivator took out a storage bag and said with a smile, "As long as you know the rules. Here's 1,000 spirit stones. The short sword in your hand belongs to me. Seeing that you're an 8th-level Foundation establishment cultivator, I'll have to put in a lot of effort to deal with you. If you know what's good for you, leave the short sword and scram with the spirit stones." Wang Daoyuan held the hilt of the tiger-killing sword and released his powerful spiritual sense. Using the misty cloud escape, he flitted past the gray-robed cultivator. A pitch-black cloud enveloped the surrounding 10 zhang. He deliberately held back and didn't use the cloud mist escape at full strength. After a few breaths of time, the black mist dissipated. The gray-robed cultivator still maintained his original posture, but the storage bag in his hand and waist were gone. Wang Daoyuan held the 2 storage bags in his hand and said with a smile, "Mirror Treasure Lake's people are really simple. I just arrived and someone is already giving me all his belongings." The surrounding cultivators all had strange expressions. This was the first time someone praised Mirror Treasure Lake like this. They were flattered. As soon as he finished speaking, the gray-robed cultivator fell to the ground. His head hit the ground and separated from his body. However, no blood flowed out. If one looked carefully, there was a layer of black ice at the cut on his neck. This time, the surrounding cultivators were truly shocked. Killing someone 1 level above him in an instant, and no one saw how he did it. Wang Daoyuan spoke again, "I don't have a habit of using people to refine tools. Whoever wants this dead dog can take it." With that, he turned around and walked away. Only after he walked more than 20 feet away did a few cultivators dare to come forward and snatch the corpse. On a tall building in the market, 2 white-haired old cultivators, one with a long beard and the other with a short beard, were watching this scene. The long-bearded cultivator asked, "Did you see anything?" The short-bearded cultivator replied, "Spiritual sense suppression, causing the opponent to lose focus for a moment." Then, using a brilliant escape technique, he quickly passed by the opponent and used the short sword in his hand to cut off the opponent's head. This person's spiritual power carried a kind of cold yin qi, able to freeze the blood of a ninth-layer foundation establishment cultivator. His escape technique was extremely extraordinary, but I couldn't see anything special about it. Moreover, this person's spiritual sense cultivation is not below yours or mine. The long-bearded cultivator said with a smile, "The first part is correct, but the last part is bullshit." "What do you mean not below yours or mine? Why don't you try competing with him? This brat's spiritual sense cultivation is stronger than both of us peak foundation establishment cultivators. I really don't know how he cultivated it." The short-bearded cultivator said with a helpless smile, "Can't I talk big? Then how should we deal with this person? Should we deal with him or rope him in?" Chapter 301. The long-bearded cultivator stroked his long beard and pondered for a long time before saying, "This person is at the 8th level of foundation establishment, and his spiritual sense cultivation is above ours. This kind of person is either a direct disciple of a great power and has come out to gain experience. If we take care of this kind of person, it will be hard to leave anyone alive in the entire Mirror Treasure Lake. Or he has great luck and great talent. This kind of person's cultivation progress is extremely fast and is not to be trifled with. If we make a move on him, it will be fine if we succeed. But if he escapes, then we will wait for him to come back and kill us in a few years. In my opinion, we should not act blindly without thinking first. If this person is only here to travel, then we should not disturb him. If he is staying here for a long time, then we can also rope him in. As long as he does not interfere with our plan, we should not make a move. If he insists on opposing us, then we can only send him away." The short-bearded cultivator nodded and said, "Let's do it this way." This person casually revealed two methods that we cannot compare to. This person is also a decisive person and does not seem like a greenhorn. He must have some trump cards that he has not used yet. We really do not have much confidence in taking him down. If we can avoid making a move, then we should try not to. Wang Daoyuan knew nothing about the two's plan and was still strolling around the market. The loose cultivators of Mirror Treasure Lake really had no taboos. Returning Wild Goose Market could not sell anything related to demonic beasts, but here they did not care at all. Demonic beast bones, horns, scales and so on were all available. The highest cultivation here was peak foundation establishment, and they could only hunt rank 2 demonic beasts. Thus, most of the demonic beast materials here were mid to low grade rank 2. There were very few high grade rank 2 materials and no rank 3 materials at all. Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis was surrounded by barren land. Spiritual herbs were extremely rare, and they were all sand spirit plants. Their value was not high, so he only bought some rank 2 sand spirit plant seeds as backup. He did not linger around the stall for too long. Instead, he walked to the front of the tallest building in the market. This was a restaurant called the Mirror Lake Restaurant. Wang Daoyuan walked into the restaurant and saw that it was quite lively inside. The first floor of the restaurant was a lobby that took up more than half an acre of land. There were 40 to 50 tables, most of which were occupied. He chose a table in the corner and sat down. He shouted, "Shopkeeper, give me a few dishes and 2 jars of good wine." Not long after, a late-stage chi refinement cultivator ran over with 2 wine jars and said, "Senior, this is your wine. The dishes will be served soon." Wang Daoyuan nodded and didn't say anything. The cultivator then left. This waiter was the first chi condensation cultivator he had seen in this place. In this kind of environment where the strong preyed on the weak, even an early foundation establishment cultivator would not be able to survive, let alone a chi refinement cultivator. After a quarter of an hour, the waiter came back with a wooden tray. There were 6 dishes on the tray. He placed the 6 dishes on the table beside Wang Daoyuan and said with a smile, "Senior, your dishes are all here. May I ask if you have any other orders?" Wang Daoyuan opened a jar of wine and poured a bowl of wine. He said, "That's all." When going out, he still had to be careful. He released a few soul-chasing bees and tasted the dishes. In a place far away from the emperor, he didn't have to worry about people recognizing his soul-chasing bees. Besides, even if someone recognized them, it wasn't a big deal. What did it have to do with Wang Daoyuan that a rogue cultivator had soul-chasing bees on him? The soul-chasing bees didn't have any abnormalities, so he ate and drank without worry. The taste of this wine was not bad. It was slightly better than scarlet blood wine but much worse than spirit peach dew. It should have been stored for about 100 years. He was used to drinking spirit peach dew that was a few hundred years old, so this wine was nothing to him. After tasting all 6 dishes, the taste was still passable. Not long after, a cultivator came to the table and asked with a smile, "May I ask if this Tao you can have a bowl of wine to drink?" This person had a pointed mouth, monkey cheeks and a rosacea nose. He was obviously a drunkard. He was also an 8th-layer foundation establishment cultivator. If his cultivation was low, he wouldn't dare to come here to drink wine. Wang Daoyuan poured a bowl of wine and said with a smile, "My wine can be drunk by others but not everyone can drink it. I wonder how does Daoyu want to drink this bowl of wine?" The rosacea-nosed cultivator smiled. "We're the same in terms of cultivation. I saw Daoyu's situation when you first came here. I'm afraid I can't even take one move from you in terms of fighting power. I don't have anything good on me but I'm quite well informed. How about exchanging information for wine?" Wang Daoyuan nodded. "It just so happens that I'm interested in some strange stories. I only know that Treasured Mirror Lake is a rogue cultivator's territory. I wonder if there are any strange stories here?" He stared at the bowl of wine on the table and revealed an awkward smile. Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and pushed the bowl of wine in front of him. He picked up the bowl and drained it in one gulp. He then said with a carefree voice, "Daoyu is really straightforward. I won't hide it anymore. This Treasured Mirror Lake oasis is only this big, and there are hundreds of foundation establishment rogue cultivators gathered here. Fighting and killing are common occurrences. No matter how bizarre the death, it's not rare, so it can't be considered strange. Only a dozen or so years ago did a strange thing happen." At this point, the rosacea-nosed cultivator stopped. Wang Daoyuan really wanted to slap him to death. Could this grandson be a storyteller? These words were really too suspenseful. He waved his hand, and the wine flew out of the jar and into the bowl in front of the rosacea-nosed cultivator, filling it to the brim. The rosacea-nosed cultivator picked up the bowl and drank it in one gulp. He burped and said, "A dozen or so years ago, a dozen or so rogue cultivators came from the south, looking for something nearby. Some bold local cultivators had a conflict with them. Although they were all rogue cultivators, they should be disciples of some big power. They cooperated with each other in fights, and a few of them could beat a dozen or so local cultivators of the same level. The local cultivators didn't dare to provoke them and let them search the Treasured Mirror Lake area. They tossed and turned in the oasis for several months, but didn't find anything. Then they tossed and turned in the South Mountain and North Mountain for half a year, but they still didn't find anything. Later they began to search the desert outside the oasis. After tossing and turning for more than a year, they had a fight with someone more than 300 kilometers east of the oasis. According to passing cultivators, they encountered a group of second-rank high-grade refined corpses. These refined corpses were both humanoid and demonic beasts. Their bodies were as tough as iron, and cultivators of the same level were no match for them. At this point he paused. Wang Daoyuan naturally knew what he meant and poured him another bowl of wine. The rosacea-nosed cultivator finished the wine and continued, "This group of cultivators wasn't weak in fights. After fighting with the refined corpses for a long time, only 4 or 5 of them were injured. Seeing that they couldn't take down the refined corpses, they left the place. They didn't return to the oasis but went straight south. After about a month, another group of cultivators dressed as rogue cultivators arrived. This time there were even more people, about 30 of them. All of them were in the late stage of foundation establishment, and a few of them were experts from the group that had come last time. This group of people came prepared. They used spirit talismans and magic weapons that were quite effective against the refined corpses. At first, they had the upper hand and suppressed the refined corpses. Later on, for some reason, the refined corpses suddenly became ferocious and defeated this group of people again. Furthermore, they left behind 5 or 6 lives. The rosacea-nosed cultivator paused again. Wang Daoyuan couldn't take it anymore. Every time he reached a critical point he would stop. This was testing his patience. Chapter 302. Seeing Wang Daoyuan's unfriendly expression, the rosacea-nosed cultivator was somewhat afraid. Wang Daoyuan took out the tiger fiend sword and patted the wine jar, saying, "Speak properly and this jar of wine is yours. If you play any more tricks, I'll let you have a taste of the tiger fiend sword." The rosacea-nosed cultivator was so frightened that he started sweating. He didn't dare to play any more tricks and swallowed his saliva, saying, "That group of cultivators lost 5 or 6 companions and more than 10 were injured. They retreated to the south. A year later, more than 30 people came again. This time they brought a low-grade grade 3 magic weapon that looked like a bell. When the refined corpses came out, a peak foundation establishment cultivator shook the bell, and all the corpses collapsed to the ground. The other cultivators took the opportunity to set the corpses on fire and burn them all. After dealing with the refined corpses, the group began to dig underground to find the place where the refined corpses came out. Later they seemed to have really dug something out and more than 10 people went down. The 20 or so people waiting outside waited for a few days, but no one came up. They sent people down to search but no one came up. A few people outside flew south and not long after the remaining 10 or so people left as well. Since then, that group of people never came up again, and the people below were never able to come up again. Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and pushed the wine jar to the rosé-nosed cultivator, saying, "This jar of wine is yours." The rosé-nosed cultivator held the jar and thanked him repeatedly, then went to an empty table to drink. Wang Daoyuan thought as he ate. The entrance to the secret realm where the myriad corpse Taoist died was indeed more than 150 kilometers east of the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis. The place where the Netherworld sect cultivators encountered the Grade 2 refined corpses should be near the entrance to the secret realm. However, the refined corpses they encountered were definitely not the ones left behind by the myriad corpse Taoist. For a golden core Taoist to cultivate refined corpses, the corpses of golden core cultivators were not easy to find. Corpses below the Violet Palace realm would only be used if they encountered corpses of Foundation establishment cultivators with special constitutions and great potential. However, special constitutions were extremely rare, and 1 in 10,000 cultivators would be hard to find. It was impossible to have so many of them. Moreover, if a cultivator with a special physique was refined into a refined corpse, their strength would be quite frightening. The first time the cultivators of the Netherworld sect encountered a refined corpse, many of them would die. If a demon beast or a human cultivator accidentally entered a secret realm and died inside, it was not impossible for them to be corroded by the yin qi and turned into a naturally refined corpse. When the cultivators of the Underworld sect came the second time, they had already suppressed the refined corpse, but the refined corpse suddenly showed great power. It could be seen that these refined corpses were not ownerless but controlled by someone. Back then only Qi-yun and Qinji had explored the secret realm. Qi-yun's soul and body were all in his spiritual pearl space. Before he deliberately revealed that there was yin qi near the Mirror Lake Oasis, the only people who knew about the secret realm were himself and Qinji. The person controlling these refined corpses could only be Qinji. As for the Nether sect's cultivators who went underground, they never came out again. There were two possibilities. The first was that Qinji had set up a trap at the entrance of the secret realm to kill everyone. He had explored the secret realm twice, and it was very easy to set up an ambush at the entrance of the secret realm. However, the people of the Nether sect were not fools. They would not rush in like a swarm of bees. Even if there was a formation, it would not kill everyone. The Nether sect sent people to search for the secret realm, so how could they not send a formation master? From Qi-yun's memory, he knew that Qinji did not specialize in formations. Therefore, the possibility of Qinji using a formation to kill the cultivators of the Nether sect was not high. The other possibility was that there was at least a third-stage refined corpse moving underground. Generally, refined corpses would fall into a deep sleep after their masters died. As long as there was no external interference, they would continue to sleep. Naturally refined corpses would move according to their own habits. If there was a third-stage naturally refined corpse inside, then Qi-yun and Qinji would have died in the secret realm. None of the cultivators of the Nether sect who went underground came out alive. They should have all been killed after entering the secret realm. Therefore, even if there was a third-stage refined corpse moving in the secret realm, it would definitely not be a natural refined corpse. Third-stage refined corpses could not fly, and they were not as agile as cultivators. However, they were able to kill over a dozen late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. This meant that there was more than one third-stage refined corpse in the secret realm. Since there was more than one third-stage refined corpse, there were no Violet Palace realm cultivators or third-stage demonic beasts around the treasured Mirror Lake. However, Qinji did not release them to kill the cultivators of the treasured Mirror Lake to obtain materials for refining corpses. The biggest possibility was that he couldn't control the third-stage refined corpse and he was afraid that it would rebel against him. From this, it could be seen that Qinji's cultivation was only at the pinnacle of the Foundation establishment realm. Now Wang Daoyuan was completely relieved. Even though he might not be able to defeat Qinji, who was at the peak of the foundational level, at least he wouldn't be killed so easily. As for the third-stage refined corpses, Qinji could not control them well. If he released them, who knew who they would attack? As long as he did not enter the secret realm, there was no need for him to worry about the third-stage refined corpses. Even if Qinji released the third-stage refined corpse, he could use the flying kite to escape. What could a refined corpse that could not fly do to him? There was no need for him to worry about Qinji's cultivation. After all, he hadn't been able to establish his Violet Palace for so many years. Right now he had to think about how to lure Qinji out. After all, he couldn't keep wasting time here. After figuring everything out, Wang Daoyuan quickly finished his meal. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan suddenly sensed a slight spiritual sense fluctuation coming from the third floor to the innkeeper's ear. It was a spiritual sense transmission, and he could tell that the spiritual sense of the person who sent it was slightly weaker than him. However, it was limited and the person should be at the pinnacle of the Foundation establishment realm. Although Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense was strong, it wasn't strong enough to intercept a spiritual sense transmission. The Mirror Lake had 3 floors. The first floor was empty, the second floor was private rooms, and the third floor was not for guests. Since he wanted to gather information, the first floor was naturally the most suitable place for him to sit. Wang Daoyuan shouted for the bill and the innkeeper personally came over. The innkeeper was at the 5th stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He came to the table and said with a smile, "Daoyu, are you satisfied with the food?" Wang Daoyuan didn't say anything and only nodded. The innkeeper continued, "These dishes cost a total of 1,000 spirit stones." Wang Daoyuan said with a smile, "Your master is really interesting. When I first arrived here, Daoyu gave me 1,000 spirit stones and your master insisted on taking them back. Forget it, it's only 1,000 spirit stones. I can kill anyone for more than that. Since your master wants them, then take them." Then he took out 10 mid-grade spirit stones from his storage pouch and handed them to the innkeeper before leaving the inn. In a room on the 3rd floor there were 2 cultivators, one with a long beard and the other with a short beard. The short-beard cultivator said with a smile, "This person is really sharp. He can even detect the fluctuations of a spiritual sense transmission. If his spiritual sense cultivation was higher, he might be able to intercept the contents of the spiritual sense transmission. What do you think of this person?" The long-bearded old man replied, "This person's spiritual power has an extremely strong yin qi. He also inquired about the corpse refinement more than 10 years ago. Maybe he's also aiming for that place. This person isn't someone who haggles over minor matters. He's also straightforward and upright in his actions. He's an excellent partner. If he continues to stay here, we can try to rope him in." The short-bearded cultivator nodded and said, "We still have to test him. Maybe this person is in cahoots with the previous group. If that's the case, we'll be asking a tiger for its skin. Moreover, this person's temperament really doesn't seem like a rogue cultivator. Coupled with his brilliant methods, he might be a direct disciple of some great power. It was risky to work with such a person. He's not weak, but if we fall underground, we'll be hunted down by the power behind him." Chapter 303. Wang Daoyuan left Mirror Lake Restaurant and flew towards Nanshan Mountain. Because there was no reliable place to live in the market, most of the rogue cultivators opened their cave abodes in Nanshan Mountain Inn and Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. His character in Mirror Lake Oasis was that of a heretic cultivator, and his spiritual power carried dense yin qi. Such a cultivator naturally didn't like sunlight, so it was unreasonable for him to live in Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. There were fewer cave abodes in Nanshan Mountain Inn than Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. Most of the cultivators in Mirror Lake didn't have a tomorrow. Therefore there were many cave abodes in the mountain. Cave abodes with people were naturally protected by formations, and cave abodes without formations were naturally uninhabited. Wang Daoyuan found an abandoned cave abode in Nanshan Mountain Inn. The location of the cave abode was quite good, halfway up the mountain. There was a huge protruding rock outside the cave abode's entrance, like a broken bridge, extending to the north for more than 30 meters. The surface of the rock was flat, and the entrance of the cave abode formed a platform that was more than 30 meters long and 40 to 50 meters wide. This cave abode didn't have any formations protecting it, so it was obviously uninhabited. After entering the cave abode, it was very simple inside. Except for a stone couch, there was nothing else. There were defensive formation patterns on the cave abode's entrance and walls, but they were already damaged. This array pattern was also only Tier 2 high-grade standard. Wang Daoyuan spent half a day's effort and finished repairing it. There was only one spirit vein in Mirror Lake Oasis, and it was at the bottom of Mirror Lake. Because of the terrain, spiritual qi couldn't easily spread out, and between the 2 mountains there was still a lot of spiritual qi. However, the drifting spiritual qi couldn't directly provide spiritual power for the formation. Therefore, the cave abode's defensive formation could only be provided with spiritual power by spirit stones. In the process of repairing the formation, he found that the formation patterns on the walls weren't damaged by the passage of time, but by sword marks, which showed that there was a fierce battle here. After he finished repairing all the formation patterns, he carefully observed the entire formation, and found that there was a problem with the formation, and there was an obvious loophole. After the formation was activated, one could enter the cave abode from the outside without destroying the formation. This formation seemed to be a trap. After someone lived in the cave abode, the person who set up the formation could sneak in and attack at any time. No wonder there was no damage on the door of the cave, but there were many sword marks inside the cave. It seemed that the last unlucky person who lived in this cave had been killed by someone through a loophole in the array formation. He reckoned that this matter had caused quite a ruckus. After that, the array formation of this immortal cave had not been repaired. No wonder no one lived in such a good cave. It wasn't easy for others to set up this trap, so it would be a pity to make up for it just like that. This formation pattern looked like it was only a few decades old. The person who set the trap back then might still be alive, and it was a good opportunity to use this trap to lure him out. He did not fix the flaws in the array formation. Instead, he set it up inside. Once someone entered, he could close the gap in the formation at any time, making it impossible for anyone to leave. In order to prevent the enemy from sending too many people, he would fail miserably at such an easy task. He was still inside the cave abode, setting up the gold fiend soul severing array with a disc array. He had witnessed the power of this formation back when he was resisting the beast tide. He had also taken the time to refine this formation disc. He had 4 tiger fiend swords and many tiger claw blades. Actually, it was better to use Dharma artifacts to hold down the array. However, even if he did not connect it to the spirit vein, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to set up a small array. The fish he wanted to catch could come at any time. There was no time to slowly set up the array. He placed the disc array in a specific position and placed a mid-grade spirit stone on it. He activated the disc array to absorb the spirit chi in the mid-grade spirit stone and store it in the disc array. After the disc array finished absorbing the energy, he replaced it with a new mid-grade spirit stone. Finally, he simply hid the disc array. After the gold fiend soul severing array was set up, he installed a mid-grade second-grade spirit stone in the original array formation of the cave abode and activated it. For foundation establishment cultivators, sleep was no longer a necessity. Meditation could completely replace sleep. Wang Daoyuan also meditated at the core of the array formation, waiting for the fish to take the bait. 3 days later at night, a soft sound came from outside the cave abode. He used his spirit sense to explore outside and saw 6 cultivators outside. They were all late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. The leader was a 9th-level foundation establishment cultivator, not far from peak foundation establishment. He was using his spirit sense to send a message to the others. After a few breaths, the 9th-level foundation establishment cultivator came to the entrance of the cave abode and touched a few array patterns on the door. Then the array patterns on the door were all closed. He led the other 5 people into the cave, and the last person closed the door behind him. Seeing Wang Daoyuan meditating, he mocked, "I didn't expect Daoyu to be an array master. Unfortunately, you're not skilled enough to see through my backup plan. This cave abode has been abandoned for decades. I didn't expect to catch a big fish. Hand over your cultivation technique and escape technique obediently and I'll spare your life." Wang Daoyuan revealed a contemptuous smile. Then, with a move of his spirit sense, the array patterns on the door of the cave abode were instantly activated. The person closest to the door among the 6 tried to open it but failed. He took out his sword and attacked the door. The array patterns only trembled a few times. It would take at least half an hour to completely break it. Wang Daoyuan smiled. "You guys are really patient. You wasted 3 days of my time and only came to die now." The 9th-level foundation establishment cultivator said in disdain, "Although you're strong and I'm not your match in a one-on-one fight, there are 6 of us. I don't believe that you can defeat the 6 of us." Wang Daoyuan smiled and did not reply. He activated the gold malevolent soul severing formation and a malevolent aura filled the entire cave abode. With the cave abode sealed, the 6 of them had no way out and were panicking. At this moment, the malevolent aura of the gold malevolent soul severing formation was released and affected their minds. 3 of the 7th-level foundation establishment cultivators were stunned on the spot. The other 3 were also momentarily dazed. Wang Daoyuan did not hesitate and immediately summoned the soul-destroying bell. At this moment he was already at foundation establishment level 8 and his spirit sense surpassed that of ordinary peak foundation establishment cultivators. He could unleash the full power of the soul-destroying bell. The cave abode was only so big and the 6 of them were very close to the soul-destroying bell. Coupled with the rebound effect of the cave abode's walls, they were repeatedly ravaged by the sound wave attacks. After the sound of the bell dissipated, the 6 of them rolled their eyes. Other than the leader being strong and having his soul damaged, there were no other fatal injuries. The other 5 had their souls dissipated from the shock and their organs were severely damaged. They were bleeding from their 7 orifices and did not seem like they would survive. It was not suitable to refine clones for these heavily injured and dying cultivators. It was too troublesome to treat their injuries. His goal was to refine clones, not to open a charity hall. Who cared about their lives? If they were not suitable to be refined into clones, there would naturally be more suitable ones and he could just capture other cultivators. Zhao Baogua and Shadow Fox had already died of old age and he was left with 4 clones as well as Qiyun who did not have a split soul. After replacing Wu Yi's split soul, the 4 split souls only accounted for 4% of his soul. He could still have 6 more clones. However, he was in a dangerous place right now and it was not suitable for him to split his soul. Among the 4 clones there was Liang Zixing, a Qi refinement cultivator. There was not much use for him to continue keeping him. He pulled out the split soul from his sea of consciousness and used the soul-splitting blade to invade the 9th level Foundation Establishment Cultivator's Sea of Consciousness. In the 9th level Foundation Establishment Cultivator's Sea of Consciousness, his soul was in a state of dissipation. With a light touch of the soul-splitting blade, the soul was about to dissipate. Wang Daoyuan immediately poured his split soul into the Sea of Consciousness. The soul-splitting blade turned into the power of his spiritual sense and reformed the soul. Then he put the clone into the space of the spirit bead. The other 5 people were already dead and there was no point in keeping them. After searching the bodies, he tied their necks with a rope and hung them on the protruding rock outside the cave abode. Chapter 304. As an evil cultivator, he couldn't be too merciful. He couldn't spare anyone who deserved to be killed. He could also use the lives of these itinerant cultivators as a warning to those who had designs on him. Apart from wanting to end the battle quickly, he also wanted to lure the snake out of its hole by using the soul-extinguishing bell this time. He used the soul-extinguishing bell in the cave abode and was blocked by the door, so it couldn't reach the market more than 50 kilometers away. However, it was still very likely that the surrounding cave abodes could hear it. Everything in the world was no longer a secret as long as there was a second person who knew about it. As long as someone other than him heard the bell, it would definitely spread. It would take him a long time to find Qinji, so it was better to lure him out. After a few hours, the new avatar and divided soul had finished fusing. His name was Lu Zong and he was the person who set up the trap in the cave abode. Lu Zong was originally from Shannon, but he was not a cultivator from Zhao country but Wei country. Wei country was in the west of Zhao country and was far weaker than Zhao country in the past. When the Zhao royal family was still around, they often attacked Wei country. If not for the beast tide that broke out in the heavenly/mountain range and Huiyin mountain many times and restrained Zhao country's energy, Wei country would have been destroyed long ago. After the Zhao royal family was destroyed, the higher-ups of the 3 major sects also suffered heavy losses. So far, the high-end combat power of the 3 major sects was much weaker than that of Wei country. Among the more than 10 large and small countries in Beiyuan Xiuxian, only Zhao country and Qin country maintained the unification of the royal family. In the other countries, the royal family was either long gone or just one of the major forces. It was the same for Wei country. When the royal family of Zhao country was still around, they seized all the strongholds at the border. Even if Zhao country was not strong now, the surrounding countries could only take back some of the territory at the edge and couldn't attack Zhao country. However, Zhao country was no longer as powerful as before, but they still occupied the strongholds at the border. The forces of Wei country were always under the threat of Zhao country. The forces of Wei country naturally wanted to take back those strongholds, but Wei country was also in a state of disunity. Only the forces near the border wanted to attack Zhao country. There was no benefit for the other forces to attack Zhao country, so they naturally wouldn't help. They were also worried that the forces near the border would take back their territory and become stronger. Not only did they not help, but they also kept hindering them. Therefore, there were no major battles at the borders of Zhao and Wei. Instead, there were many small skirmishes. Lu Zong was originally a cultivator from a family clan near the Cold River Pass at the border of Zhao and Wei. When the Wei nation attacked the Cold River Pass, they did not want to lose too many of their own disciples. Therefore, they tried their best to recruit affiliated family clans. Most of the Lu Zong family's experts had died in battle. If they continued to maintain the family's disciples would all be finished sooner or later. In order to preserve a little bit of their lineage, The remaining cultivators of the Lu clan all dispersed and went to various places to become rogue cultivators. At that time, Lu Zong was only a Qi refinement cultivator and did not carry the inheritance of the Lu family. Later on, he succeeded in building his foundation without the help of a foundation-building pill. The Wei nation forces wantonly captured itinerant cultivators as cannon fodder. These rogue cultivators fled to other places, and many of them fled into Mount Huiyan. Mount Huiyan, near the frigid river pass, was the lair of the demonic beasts. The cultivators who fled to Mount Huiyan had a slim chance of survival. Lu Fang was very lucky. When she used the Earth Escape Talisman to escape, she encountered an underground river. She followed the river to the north and finally escaped to the north of the mountain. In order to survive, he had killed many people and hunted many monsters. There were not many places in Shanbei that could accommodate him. After many years, he finally arrived at Treasure Mirror Lake. He had obtained an upper-grade Rank 2 array inheritance and became a Rank 2 array master with his good talent. Most array masters knew some refining techniques. Lu Fang's refining skills were not high and were only at the upper-grade Rank 1 level. There was no value in nurturing him at all. It was not easy to earn spirit stones from array masters. That was why he came up with such a plan to use the cave abode to set up a trap and lure people in before killing them and robbing them. Lu Fang's cultivation method and magic art were all very ordinary things. Over the years, the Immortal's cave's traps could not deceive people. She did not have many spirit stones in her hands. Even her magic weapon was only a second-tier high-grade long sword. The quality of the sword was not good and was inferior to the tiger claw blade. Wang Daoyuan could not use it at all. The other 5 cultivators, including the cultivator that he killed when he first arrived at the market, did not have anything good either. He only found some useless jade slips, 6 flying swords, and more than 40,000 spirit stones in the 6 storage bags. Lu Fang's value was not great as his refining skills were too low. An array master could only help refine a few array discs in the space of the spiritual pearl. However, his cultivation was not low and he could blend in with the blood shadow. He could learn the inheritance of the Guiyuan sword sect in the space and increase his battle strength. After joining the blood shadow, he could try to make Yulang a mere figurehead or fight to become a manager himself. After Wang Daoyuan meditated for a long time in the cave abode, a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator came to greet him. That person said, "Senior, my master has something to discuss with you. Please come to the Mirror Lake restaurant for a chat." Wang Daoyuan sneered, "What does your master have to do with me? I don't have anything important to discuss with your master. Scram, if you disturb my cultivation again, the 5 outside will be your examples." There were still 5 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators' corpses hanging on the rock at the entrance of the cave abode. He was only a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, how could he not kill them? He did not dare to say anything else and left with his tail between his legs. He arrived at the Mirror Lake restaurant and reported to the long-bearded and short-bearded cultivators. The long-bearded cultivator laughed. "This Dao Yu is quite capable." 6 people went to ambush him and 5 of them were hung up as a warning to others. Lu Zong is still missing. Our informants also did not see Lu Zong come out. He was most likely beaten to a pulp. Our informants reported that not long after the 6 of them went in, they heard the sound of a bell. After half a cup of tea's time, the 5 of them were hung on the rock. He might have a sound wave attack magic tool. His methods are far above yours and mine, so we should try to rope him in. It's a pity that this person is very wary of us and did not accept our invitation. The short-bearded cultivator said, as soon as he arrived at the Mirror Lake Oasis, he came looking for trouble twice and killed 7 people. It would be strange if he wasn't wary. We were too hasty in inviting him. He just finished killing people, so we invited him and said that we have something to discuss. No matter how you look at it, it seems like we sent people to assassinate him and after they failed, we wanted to lure him in and kill him. Our plan is not urgent and we can slowly rope him in. Let's find an excuse to meet him and dispel his wariness before we talk about other things. The long-bearded cultivator nodded and said, "Let's do it this way then. This person's cultivation techniques, spells and magic tools are all good. I haven't seen him buy anything in the market either. It can be seen that he has very high standards. It just so happens that there's going to be a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange in a while. Let's take out some good stuff and invite him in the name of the exchange." 2 months later, the long-bearded and short-bearded cultivators personally came to the door of Wang Daoyuan's cave abode. The long-bearded cultivator shouted, "I, Ji Qing, and my younger brother, Ji Yu, have come to invite Dao Yu to participate in the late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange. I wonder if Dao Yu is willing to entertain us two brothers? Wang Daoyuan scanned with his spiritual sense and discovered that the two of them were both peak foundation establishment cultivators. The strength of peak foundation establishment cultivators was not easy to estimate. Some were not much different from foundation establishment level 9, while some were far stronger. Some like Shi Zhenbang could even exchange 2 blows with Zifu realm cultivators. Therefore, early-stage and mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators would respectfully address peak foundation establishment cultivators as seniors when they met them. If he did not entertain the 2 peak foundation establishment cultivators who had personally come to invite him, he would be offending them. If he really became enemies with these 2 brothers, he did not even have the confidence to win against one of them with his strength, let alone 2 brothers. He still had to deal with Qinji. If he could avoid offending these 2, he would try his best not to. Wang Daoyuan closed the cave abode's defensive formation and said, "Dao Yu has come to visit. Please forgive me for not coming out to welcome you." Chapter 305. The 2 people walked into the abode. Wang Daoyuan did not get up to welcome but sat beside the Gold Fiend Soul Severing Formation's core array disk, ready to activate the array formation at any time. With the protection of the array formation, even if these 2 people made a move against him, he could handle it too. The 2 brothers were both peak foundation establishment realm cultivations. Their divine senses were not weak either. They could naturally discover the array disk that Wang Daoyuan casually concealed. Ji Qing clasped his hands and said, "Dao Yu came to Treasure Mirror Lake Oasis for so long, but we still haven't asked for Dao Yu's name." Wang Daoyuan clasped his hands and said, "This one is Wu Chuan. Greetings to the 2 Dao Yu." Ji Yu smiled and said, "Wu Dao Yu has such strength at Foundation Establishment Realm 8th level cultivation. I presume that opening up the Purple Palace isn't a hard thing either. Looking at the arrangement of this abode, Dao Yu is also an array master?" Wang Daoyuan answered, "This Wu indeed knows a little about the Tao of array formations." Ji Qing clasped his hands and said, "I wonder if Wu Dao Yu has dabbled in artifact refinement before?" Wang Daoyuan countered with a question, "Could it be that there are still array masters who don't know artifact refinement? Although this Wu's artifact refinement Tao is inferior to array formations, I can also barely enter Tier 2 standard." Ji Qing gave his younger brother a glance with a smile and said, "Then I have to congratulate Wu Dao Yu. We itinerant cultivators lack complete inheritances. Therefore, itinerant cultivators who major in alchemy, artifact and talisman, these 3 paths, are very few. In the past late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange meetings, array discs, magic artifacts, medicinal pills, spirit talismans, and so on are all extremely popular. Each exchange meeting, there will be quite a number of good artifact refinement materials. There are even quite a number of all kinds of incomplete Tier 3 inheritances. If Dao Yu is interested, you can take out array discs, magic artifacts and so on to exchange for artifact refinement materials and so on." Wang Daoyuan's face revealed a look of interest and said, "Looks like I have to go to this exchange meeting?" Ji Yu smiled and said, "Since Dao Yu is interested in participating, us 2 brothers' trip this time isn't in vain. In 2 months, the exchange meeting will be held on the 3rd floor of the Mirror Lake Inn. Dao Yu, please come. Goodbye." Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands and said, "I will definitely be there on time. I won't see you off." During these 2 months, Wang Daoyuan didn't go out. Instead, he refined several artifacts. His avatar Lu Zong also refined some array discs inside the space. He could also take out some pills and talismans to exchange, but he didn't need to refine any more. In the past few years he hadn't fought much, so he hadn't used up any talismans, and he had only used up some soul-solidifying pills. In order to maintain his level, he had to refine a furnace of pills and 1 or 2 talismans every 4 or 5 days. He still had a lot of stock in his space. After reaching the foundation establishment stage, cultivators would be able to fly on their swords, and offensive talismans would no longer be of much use. Level 2 talismans were mainly defensive talismans and talismans with special effects. He still had a total of more than 1,000 high-grade Tier 2 defensive and escape talismans, as well as over 1,000 essence-condensing pills, detoxification pills, and soul-strengthening pills. He didn't need the rejuvenation pill himself, so he only refined a few, only 100 or 200 of them. If he sold all these things, he would get hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Of course, he didn't dare to take them all out. Otherwise, he would definitely be attacked by a group. It would be good to exchange them for some valuable spiritual items or incomplete level 3 inheritances. For the pill, artifact, and talisman array inheritances, take the artifact refinement inheritances as an example. Most inheritances had the same foundation, but different inheritances focused on different things. In a brilliant inheritance, there would be a unique Dharma artifact. Even if there were only one or two unique Dharma artifact refinement methods in the inheritance, they would still be of great value. After all, it was too difficult to research a new Dharma artifact himself. Bai Sheng's avatar had been busy for 20 years and only improved the crane feather boat. With Wang Daoyuan's guidance, the improved flying kite still had a huge flaw. If he were to research a Dharma artifact from scratch, it would take at least 80 to 100 years. To artifact refinement masters, the refinement methods of special Dharma artifacts were extremely precious. Apart from that, it was the same for pill, talisman, and array Dao. There were many basic things, and slightly special ones were very difficult to obtain. If he wanted to develop pill recipes, talismans, and array formations himself, he would have to try countless times. Although pill, talisman, and array Dao were important, they couldn't compare to cultivation. Naturally, Wang Daoyuan couldn't spend so much effort to research these things. His avatar's soul was injured and his comprehension was extremely low. It was still alright to learn step by step. At most, he would come up with new ideas and let them put them into practice. The possibility of relying on his avatar to come up with new tricks was too low. Therefore, it was also very valuable to be able to obtain some incomplete inheritances. 2 months had passed and the trade meet was about to begin. He put away the gold fiend soul severing array in his cave abode and activated the defensive array formation. Then he left his cave abode and headed to the Mirror Lake restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, he displayed his foundation establishment level 8 spirit energy waves. The manager asked the Qi refinement cultivator to bring him to the door of the 3rd floor. Wang Daoyuan entered the door and saw that the layout inside was a little like a classroom in his previous life. The space inside the room was long from north to south and narrow from east to west. At the northernmost end was a platform that was more than a foot tall. In the middle of the platform was a table that resembled a lectern. Where the table should be, there were prayer mats. When he entered the door, there were already 30 to 40 people in the room. Seeing him enter, the brothers Ji Cheng and Ji Yu cupped their fists and said, "Wu Daoyu is here. Please take a seat." With that, they led him to the front row and sat with the other Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators. The Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators of the Mirror Lake Oasis all had a few subordinates. Naturally, they had heard of Wang Daoyuan's situation. Knowing that his strength was comparable to Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators, they had no objections. On the other hand, the other Foundation Establishment Level 8 and Level 9 cultivators were somewhat unhappy and asked each other about Wang Daoyuan's identity. When they learned that he had occupied the trap cave abode and killed 6 late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators alone, they didn't say anything. The corpses of the 5 late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators were still hanging on the boulder in front of the cave abode. No one wanted to provoke him. After all, this person had killed Foundation Establishment Level 9 cultivators in broad daylight. Apart from those Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators, no one was confident that they could withstand his sword. Since the Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators didn't say anything, the others naturally didn't dare to court death. After waiting for about 2 hours, there were a total of more than 80 people present. Apart from the Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators, most people didn't show their faces. Wang Daoyuan couldn't wait for Chen Ji to come to him, so he didn't hide. Ji Qing stood on the stage and said, "Everyone, Daoyu is almost here. The exchange meeting is held once every 10 years. This time there are many acquaintances and strangers, so I'll go over the rules again. Everyone, Daoyu is free to go on stage and show what you want to exchange. You can exchange anything you want. As long as there's no conflict here, everything else is up to you." With that, he walked down the stage. Wang Daoyuan's goal was to exchange for some materials and inheritances. The only things he could take out were common magic artifacts. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to go on stage. A 7th-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator took the lead and walked to the front of the stage. He took out a turtle shell that was more than 30 feet long and said, "This is the shell of a 2nd-stage high-grade demon beast, the thick earth spirit turtle. It was killed not long ago and is very well preserved. I want to exchange it for a defensive magic artifact. It's best if it's of the metal attribute. I can also accept non-elemental ones." If this turtle shell was taken apart, it would be enough to refine 5 2nd-stage high-grade shields. Just the materials alone could be sold for 7,000 to 8,000 spirit stones. No one present had any intention of exchanging it. After all, refining materials were not rare. Wang Daoyuan took out a star steel shield and asked, "Will this do?" The Wang family had a mine of star steel. When he was refining the flying boat, his 12th uncle had prepared a lot for him. Because star steel could be recycled and reused, he didn't use much. Now he still had a few hundred kilograms of it in his space. This shield was refined from the leftover materials from refining the flying boat's core when he opened his shop in Guiyin Market. If he sold it in Guiyin Market, it would be worth about 4,000 to 5,000 spirit stones. It was a big profit to exchange it for the turtle shell. However, the Mirror Treasure Oasis was full of itinerant cultivators. There weren't many cultivators who were proficient in refining magic artifacts. The price of magic artifacts was very high. In the eyes of everyone, the turtle shell and the shield were of similar value. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.